Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Snarp Fangle Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Metzger, along with the man who doesn't delay. In fact, he acts now because supplies are running out. He'll be live in 6 to 8 years, and if you follow him, there may be a tomorrow. But if the offer's shunned, you might as well be walking on the sun. Ladies and gentlemen, David Reed.
Wow, what an introduction, Jake. It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
We're back in the 90s, David. How does it feel?
We're back, baby.
We're back, baby. We're so back. Oh, my gosh. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah?
And our guest, how's she doing?
Oh, yeah. We have a guest. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to somebody. You might have heard her laugh, and that gracious laugh you hear is the voice of an individual who probably would have been a voice as one of the many kid actors in Adventures in Odyssey, or even a co-financier of Fancy Monkey Studios. Ladies and gents, Lexi Metzger.
Yo, hello.
Wow, what an enthusiastic greeting.
Yeah, how you doing, Lexi?
I am currently, I'm sweating right now, but I am doing good.
Yeah.
A little tired.
Yeah, it's been, oh man, yeah, I've been cutting grass all day in the sun.
Cutting
Cutting grass and snorting dirt, just like I do, so. And the sun, I didn't wear black today, thankfully. I wore green, which is still.
You blended in with the grass.
I blended in with the grass. That's why.
It never saw it coming.
Never saw it coming. Oh, but seriously, Lexi, how are you doing? Anything new in your life recently?
Well, I fell down right before Easter. I fell and hurt my ankle.
Oh.
So, it's a little sprained and it's still recovering. So even though Easter has long since passed. But other than that, I am excited to be here. I have written down a few things.
Yeah.
About, what we're going to be talking about today, our topic. So
yeah.
I'm a little excited, a little nervous, and I will probably be laughing like crazy because I am a bit sleep deprived.
That's okay. So are we. We're always sleep deprived here on Snarp Fangle.
Indeed.
As
Indeed
David looks at the clock and he's got to go to bed. He's like, whoa. Also, I think that clock is. It's on time.
No, it's an
hour.
Oh, no,
it's an hour behind.
Yeah, it's.
I was like, we still have time.
Yeah, no.
Oh, man. Well, anyway, welcome to Snarp Fangle, everybody. This is a conversational podcast, if you didn't know that. And each and every week, we bring a topic to the table of the congregation, which is you listening on YouTube and the internets and the World Wide Web. And we thank you so much for taking your time to listen to this craziness as we're about to ensue. Lexi came to us and said, hey, I have a topic for you. I really want to talk about it. And so I'm going to just pass it along to her. Lexi, what is our topic today of discussion?
Video game soundtracks.
Okay, video game soundtracks. Okay. Oh my God.
Excuse me.
I don't remember that in any video game I've ever listened to.
Did you play Conker? Did you play Conker?
No.
I was trying to stifle that, but
It's been stifled now.
Oh my.
Yeah, Lexi came to us and she said, hey, I really want to talk about video games and all the such. And so we each put together a list of our own and we're going to go through them one by one. And I just want to preface as well, because I'm not a musically gifted individual.
Neither am I.
I'm not. David's probably the far and above the most musically gifted person I know personally. And so I don't know how he feels about this, but for me, I don't really pay attention to like percussion or things of like in the orchestra very well. I more like go by music by how it makes me feel, which is kind of in itself the goal of a lot of music and creation and that kind of thing. So that's where I'm coming at and my perspective. I'm curious to see, David, where you're coming from in your list and what your perspective is on video game music.
yeah, I mean, I'll also preface this by saying, despite being a musician, I'm probably not going to come at this from a real technical perspective. I'm mostly going on, again, how it makes me feel.
Yeah.
How about you, Lexi?
I studied a little bit of music, music appreciation my last semester of college. So it kind of gave me an understanding about percussion and stuff like that. I had to learn about all the pieces of an orchestra and to watch a concert online. And so, but I'm not, I like music. I I don't know a lot about it. I can barely remember what I learned about in class, except percussion, which even I just remember the word for some reason and nothing else.
Came to me as if in a dream.
Oh, Isan Gagib! Isan Al Gaib! Me and David went to go see Dune Part 2 last week, and it was a good movie.
How many times have you seen that?
I've only seen it twice.
I feel like you see it like so many more times because you keep bringing it up like every chance you can.
It's a movie that sticks with you, as good or bad as the ending is, it sticks with you. So, no, I completely agree, Lexi. I think because did you ever take a music theory class at all?
I'm so sorry. I didn't take music theory. I just took 2 music related classes. One was jazz appreciation. The other was music appreciation.
Okay. Yeah.
So
that's where you're coming from. But I'm really intrigued to hear your list. In fact, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to go with David to start us off with his first pick in his list here.
All right. My first pick. So these aren't in any particular order. So I'll just kind of go with whichever one. Let's go with Zelda. So my first pick would be The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Ooh, okay. Do tell.
Yeah, so just for a little contextual information, that's the 3rd Zelda game in the series, debuted on the SNES, 16-bit, lovely game. Great step forward in fleshing out the world of Zelda and adventure games in general. And I think this leads me to what really struck me about the music was the main theme. So I'm going to get a little technical.
Okay.
So
go on.
So being a game on the SNES, the audio of Link to the Past is quite limited in terms of what can be done on it. Basically, no actual raw recordings of musical instruments could be done. No epic layered soundtracks.
It's all chiptune, right?
Yeah, it all uses synthesized MIDI music. So very limited. So I think what really got me, because I grew up playing the Super Nintendo. That was my entry point into the world of gaming.
That was your jam.
That was my jam. Yes.
Lots of jam.
Lots of jam. That was my entry point in the world of gaming. And so as a child, when you get through the opening part of the game, the following your uncle out into the rain, getting the sword, rescuing Zelda in the castle, finally getting out of the sanctuary, and you just set foot into the open world of Hyrule for the first time, and that opening theme boots up and it just starts going, and it's like, man, it was
magical.
Yeah, it was magical. It was it propelled you along on an adventure. It made you really feel like you were on a grand adventure. It was truly epic, which is incredible given the technical limitations of the Super Nintendo as regards to audio. It didn't feel tinny or cheap or unreal or like a phony substitute for real instrument sounds. It felt full. It felt epic, and it was just the theme is pretty repetitive too. There's not a whole lot to it, and yet it never gets boring. It just kind of propels you along your adventure in the world of Hyrule.
Yeah, and this was a game that came out in 91 in Japan and 92 here in America. And I got to say that I remember when you and me the other day, because we were testing out Link to the Past and some certain factors, we were trying to install a multiplayer mod for it, and that was a really interesting experience, just like exploring this game, because I've started it 3 or 4 times, from experience, and I never really played it all the way through. But even when we were just testing out the multiplayer mod on our little machines, it was really the music was really cool. The opening, where it's dark and damp and it's just menacing, hey, something's going down, wake up, Link. And then you get out to the field and you're kind of oh, whoa, this is kind of we're ready for the adventure. It's cool. Very neat. Any other tracks stand out to you in that game at all, or is it mostly the encompassing theme that Koji Kondo conducted.
Yeah, I would say the main theme is definitely the standout, but also I think the music as a whole, I don't really have any other standouts necessarily, but the music as a whole does such a great job because, the game opens with you waking up in bed, your uncle saying, stay here, I got to go do something. And then you follow him out into the rain, and it's like the soundtrack is just this like real moody, real dark, real atmospheric. It's like, honestly, I don't think a game up to that point had ever had as cinematic of an opening as that. And I think the finely crafted soundtrack has a lot to do with that.
And it's definitely like in that era too. I mean, I remember watching or playing a little bit of the very first Zelda, kind of skipping over Zelda 2 because I'm like, this kind of looks boring. And then seeing what Link to the Past looks like, I'm like, whoa, this is like a super step up from what's come before. And being the third entry, it seems like Nintendo really got a good grasp on how to make a Zelda game and to make it what we know today, or to what we know today until say the open world Breath of the Wild game came out. But even that has like resonance and lots of plenty themes that call back to the other ones, and I think the feeling's the same and across all the Zelda games.
I think if there's like one thing that like no one really complains about in any Zelda game, it's the music.
Yes.
Like there's because you got like the main theme, and that's like in like basically every Zelda game. But then like you don't see anyone like throwing shade to like A Link to the Past or A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS, or what is it, the sequel to Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks.
Yeah, Spirit Tracks.
Like, yeah, and I've heard some tracks from. I've never played Spirit Tracks, and I've never played Phantom Hourglass, but I've heard tracks from those games, and I'm just like, wow, that was really good.
And as we get through our list, I definitely have some examples of this, but there are definitely soundtracks where I haven't really played a lot of the game or even necessarily played it with a good amount of attention, but I have just listened to that soundtrack specifically over and over and over, and we'll get into that. So, Lexi, let's go on to you. What is your first pick of your five albums or games that we're gonna go through?
All right, so I'm gonna. You're gonna be so mad at me.
No, that's okay. I think I know what you have, but I'm going to like. That's why I didn't put any of what I think you have on the lists, because I think you're gonna talk about it. So
okay, so I have my top 5. One of them is a little bit of a cheat because it's basically genuinely the whole series of a game.
Oh,
and then I have honorable mentions, and
I think we'll save honorable mentions to the end.
Okay.
And we'll just go through our list as we go through it. So yeah, go for it. What's your number 1 or 5 or whatever?
All right. Well, I did put number 1, which is the main one I wanted to talk about, was a game called No Straight Roads. And Jake's heard me talk about this so much because it was the number 1 game I played in 2020 during quarantine. I found out about it about, I'd say a month after it came out. And then I just kind of threw my money and bought it.
What kind of game is it, by the way?
So it's a boss rush game. And basically the premise of the game is you're on an island in this middle of the city called Vinyl City, and the city literally runs on music. So it's like Monsters Incorporated, where they use the screams or the laughters for energy. The basic premise is here, but it's music. And so every sector of the city is run by a different musician and a different artist. And ultimately, though, EDM rules the city, and you play as these 2 characters who are a rock duo. And the girl plays the guitar, the guy plays the drums, and you have to go through the city to take down the EDM empire. And that's what they call it in the game.
Okay.
And they want rock to rule again, because rock ruled the city at one point.
Because, they built that city on rock and roll, So they're fighting EDM, the bad guy.
Yeah.
And they have to bring rock and roll back to the forefront of society.
Yeah. And the one girl, like her...
And it's like a 3D... Is it a 3D platformer? Or is it third person?
It's a 3D like platformer, I would say. Okay. And each boss is a different, technically, genre of music.
Oh, that's cool.
So the first boss that you fight... So like after you go through the tutorial, you do you like walk through the city, and they'll show you like stuff on projections that kind of tells the story. And David, you would love this game because every boss that you fight, except the last one, has 3 different tracks. Like, it's all the same song, but it's 3 different tracks. So, like, you have the bass track of the game, of the boss, and then you'll have the EDM version of it.
Oh,
and then
cool.
you'll have the rock version.
Oh.
And it's really interesting. So, like, the first boss you fight is a DJ. So his is like, I don't remember all the terms for like certain like EDM music and stuff like that, because they have like funk house, they have new disco and stuff like that. I'm trying to remember it, but so like the first guy, he's a DJ, so you fight him. And then the second one is a mermaid, and supposed to be so it's supposed to be a play on Hatsune Miku and Virtual Idols.
Oh, yeah.
And she's just a robot with 4 kids in her, and like one does the motion capture, one does changes her outward appearance. One in the middle of the fight, when you're fighting, because you go into like a virtual world, you'll see the mouse of the computer try and click you while you're trying to fight in the 3D. And like there's one girl who's like doing the voice and the singing voice of it. And so it's supposed to be like that. There's like a part where you go into one part of the digital world and you see a bunch of glow sticks. Like it's supposed to be like the Japanese like glow stick concerts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The third boss is of the main bosses, because there is a side boss that is kind of optional. He's like a rapper. Jake's heard me.
Oh yeah, I've heard this boss. I've watched you play it.
Yeah, and then
That's
like
interesting.
and I've unintentionally got my nephews hooked on the game.
So if you could pick, like, say, because this is really interesting. I was on the website just now for this game, No Straight Roads.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from 2 people. Juan Hosmer, the guy apparently who was part of Final Fantasy 15's development, and a guy named Diem Dlzaudin of Street Fighter fame. So it's just these 2 guys went out and made this game. There's a couple. I looked at the soundtrack. There's over. Let's see. There's 46 tracks right here.
There's
over 10 composers. What I'm seeing. Because there's so many different.
I actually made a chart here.
Oh my gosh!
And
okay.
I didn't do how many tracks everyone did, because some of these people would just do the remixes that you would unlock at the end of the game.
Oh wow!
Some of these people were part of the DLC, because they didn't after the game came out.
They did a DLC.
So after the game came out, on every version except the Switch version, got a Christmas free DLC, and if you downloaded it, it came with Christmas versions of each boss fight. And so the DJ, when you go to fight him, he's wearing a Santa hat and stuff, and his turntable is a Christmas hearth and stuff like that. Has little like socks on it. What is it? Like the third boss, who's like a child prodigy who's protected by a giant tree person.
Uh-huh.
She's dressed as like a little angel and stuff. I didn't get to this yet, but one of the last bosses is a robot boy band that's supposed to be making fun of K-pop boy bands.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because they're robots, and every time you fight one, they throw another one out there and stuff.
Is there any specific tracks that stand out to you in this game?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So like
just give me like a few. Like, it sounds like you really are loving this, but just give me a few, I guess, because I think there's quite a bit to look at here. But yeah, what's your favorites?
Okay,
give us the rundown.
So one of the very first tracks is the one where you're walking through the city after the tutorial, and you're just kind of seeing how the city works, and the 2 characters are just kind of bantering and interacting with each other. It's called Contemplate, and it's less than 2 minutes, and it's one of the prettiest like chill soundtracks, because it has like that funky like EDM, not EDM, but it has like a bunch of funk to it, but
kinda
then
like techno a little bit.
Yeah, a little techno, but it's like kind of lo-fi. And then in the background, suddenly you'll hear the guitar start to go, and then the guitar will slowly become a part of the song.
Huh.
And I really liked that and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know about.
You're a big fan
music.
of this game. I can tell.
Another track that like I wrote down a few of them. So like all the boss fights are called versus boss name here.
Okay.
And the last boss fight, the main bad guy in the game, her name's Tatiana, and the tracks that they played like is amazing, because she only has 2. She doesn't have so she has EDM and then she has a rock, and that's it. And in the game, when you fight a boss, you have a meter at the top, and it'll start in the middle, and then if the bad guy's winning, it goes over to the EDM, and the music changes to EDM.
Oh, interesting.
And then if your guys are winning, it flips over to the rock side, and then you'll hear the rock score in the background. But the last boss fight with her is probably one of the most intense boss fights I have ever heard, because not only does the original track, like first it starts out with EDM, it's like all this techno music, but if you go back and listen to the rock version, it has like a choir in it. It's like insane. And don't even get me started on the Christmas version of that boss fight, because in the middle of it, when there's a break in the music, suddenly it'll start playing Carol of the Bells. And it is one of the most insane things. Like, I remember after I beat the game, because the difficulty rises with 2 people, and I was playing the game almost all with 2 players.
Oh, so yeah, it's co-op. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like kind of like Cuphead, where the more people, the more difficult it is. And I was trying so hard, because I was on a time limit. Like, I had to go somewhere and so I was trying to beat the game with my nephew. And it was just like, that put so much stress on me that I could not listen to those 2 tracks of the last boss fight for like 3 months. All I listened to
stress inducing.
Well, the only one that didn't like cause me stress was the Christmas version. So I listened to the Christmas version for 3 months. As stupid as that sounds, like, if you heard the soundtrack, you know it's good. I like it.
Yeah, No Straight Roads. I remember you're like, oh, so gaga over this game. I was like, every time I would see you, like, I'd come over, you're like either playing it or you're telling me about No Straight Roads, and it was like your new obsession, and I was like,
wearing the merch.
Here we go again. Here we go again. We had all fandoms and all that, but yeah, it was what's like, is there a specific track that you have, like the name of it, that you would recommend to people if they were going to seek out this soundtrack?
Well, it's really hard, because each boss fight is like, it's a different genre of music. And so it's like, it's really
big
hard.
Variety in there.
The only one music like track I wouldn't suggest that I will not listen to this day is the second to last boss. It's called Versus Eve, and she's like a psychic fashion model, and she has some beef with one of the main characters. So like in the game, like the music is just kind of sporadic and kind of all over the place, because in the game she's literally bending reality to her will, where she's separating one character from another. So I never liked it. Also, like, not to put a damper on anyone who likes this character, but she makes me very uncomfortable. There's a really uncomfortable cutscene before the fight, and I'm just like, this is no, this rubs me the wrong way. No,
it's a kids game.
Well, it's rated E10, but they have a lot of cursing.
E10. Oh my gosh, that's so.
They have a lot of cursing for an E10 game.
Have you heard 10-year-olds?
Boo! Boo to you!
I know a lot of 10-year-olds in. You gotta control their mouth.
What 10-year-olds have you been hanging around, David?
More than I'd like to. More than I'd like to. See, my preferred number of 10-year-olds to hang around would be 0. So the fact that it's more than that number is
Wow.
But we won't talk about that.
We won't talk about
Maybe we should go over to Jake now. I've talked too much about my favorite game.
Okay, so for me, I have a list here.
Oh boy.
And as I was going through, like, I was out mowing a bunch of grass today for several hours, and I was like listening to going through my phone. What do I have downloaded? What do I want to put on here? And my goal with this was kind of like with my list was I kind of knew what you were going to go with, David, like, some other stuff. And I was like, okay, I know what Lexi's going to go with. I'm like, what's my goal with this? So my goal with this was basically trying to pick stuff that I would go back to and listen to that I would consistently. So I would go back and I'm like, oh man, I love that track. I'm going to go back and listen to it. Or hell, that's on that playlist. Oh, I just want to go back and listen to the whole album. Because for me, a lot of video game soundtracks are more, ambient. They kind of fit the mold. Like, I love Half-Life 2 and Half-Life, but I'm not going to go back and listen to those soundtracks because it's kind of like, especially Half-Life 2 is like street rock, punk / metal. And it's like very experiential or setting the mood. That's what a lot of these soundtracks do.
Yeah.
But for me, and even Ori and the Blind Forest, which I think is an amazing game. However,
wow.
I'm not going to go back and like actively seek that out and go back to it. versus some of these others I've listed. So I'm going to say my number one. I'm going to go into probably my least favorite to most favorite, but these, like, I have a lot in my list, but I'm just going to keep it to 5. And so the first one I'm going to pick, and these are all my favorite, like all my number one, basically.
Okay.
So the first one I'm going to go through is Age of Mythology.
I was hoping you would put that on your soundtrack.
For those who aren't aware, Age of Mythology is a real-time strategy game made by Ensemble Studios in 2002. And it was from these are the guys that made Age of Empires, basically.
But mythology.
But this time it's mythology. It's not grounded in reality. So it's real-time strategy. You're from the God view or whatever, and you're controlling your units. And with a lot of these games, there is for sure a lot of really amazing soundtracks. I mean, you think of Civilization, amazing music. Think of Age of Empires, really good jams. You get to Age of Mythology, and they're like, we got a banger we're going to cook here. So the people who actually wrote the music, let me see if I can get their names here, are Stephen Ripley and Kevin McMullen. Yes, those are real people. And basically, if I can grab my phone and look through it, there's about 12 tracks or so in that whole game that they wrote. And they went up to Seattle, and actually, you know the Hobbit video game, Lexi?
Yeah.
Which might come up later. So they recorded the soundtrack at the same studio in Seattle.
Really? I did not know that.
In fact, I want to say... never mind. I was going to say that maybe the Phantom Menace soundtrack was recorded there. No, it was recorded in LA. So no, thank you.
Anyway.
But the names for some of these tracks
oh my gosh,
are ridiculous. Yeah. So you have like the main epic, like, oh, da, na, 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 na. That soundtrack, which has a choir, giant bongs and drums and dun, 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 is named A Cat Named Mittens. You have stuff like Eat Your Potatoes, Chocolate Outline, Flavor Cats, Adult Swim. Like, you have so many tracks that are like
copyright.
Yeah, in a pile of its own good. Like, you have so many tracks that are like so bizarrely named, and the record label they went and recorded this with is called Something Else. So SUM something else. And it's like just so bizarre. And for a strategy game on a Windows computer, like,
dude,
okay.
Yeah, and when you hear that music, you would not think they have those names.
No. So it's very, very, I don't know what their goal was with this, but it's very hilarious when you look back at it. And I think my favorite, if you're going to go, this soundtrack, like, I'm very biased, and like, this is very nostalgic for me. Like, I would sit at the computer for hours and play this game. Like, some people had Age of Empires 2 or Age of Empires. I had Age of Mythology growing up. And I've sunk probably countless hours into this game.
Oh, yeah.
And the soundtracks just are in my mind, and it triggers me sometimes. I'm like, when I hear it, I'm like, whoa, it's bringing me back, you know? But there was one point when I was in college, and I was trying to do my lab in the computer lab. I was trying to work on my assignments, and I just put it on, and I kind of just went and did my assignments, and I just a rush of nostalgia went over me, but also a new appreciation for this soundtrack as well, because it's just it sets the mood so well. Mm-hmm. Like, I can imagine when I'm listening to some of these tracks, all right, I'm building my base, I'm building my units, I'm getting the gold, I'm getting the wood, I'm getting my resources. Just, and this is, you know, I have I'm playing the campaign, you know. But my favorite tracks specifically, it's really hard. Like, they're all really, really good, but I'm going to just pick 2. It's Flavor Cats and it's Adult Swim. Those 2 are just amazing. And they're so good at what they're trying to accomplish. And the orchestra itself, like, there's a behind the scenes you can find on YouTube about how they made it. It's amazing. Like, just the level of quality that went into this soundtrack is amazing. And I was wondering if you guys have any experience with Age of Mythology or have heard any of the tracks. David?
I actually don't. My entry point into that studio's games was actually playing Age of Empires with you and Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just never grew up playing real-time strategy games, so I don't have a whole lot of experience with them.
You're more of that Valkyrie Profile kind of RPG.
Oh,
what?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
RPGs, yeah, that was definitely my bag.
Oh, yeah.
RTSs, on the other hand, no.
And it's cool because I kind of feel bad, honestly, going through this list, because most of these are probably in the last 25 years, honestly. Like, it's nothing from the like straight like 80s or 90s, to be quite frank. But I feel like once we got to the PS1 and we had a chance to in the N64 era, and we had a chance to really get a good handle on what's it called? Creation of really the quality of sound got consistently better, especially in the PS1, because you had a CD format and you could put a lot of things on there. But also in the N64, when you have stuff like we might talk about later, Banjo-Kazooie, they were able to cram so much onto that cartridge.
Oh my
and same thing
gosh,
with
yeah.
Link to the Past, like we were talking about earlier.
Banjo-Kazooie is kind of is definitely an outlier in the world of cartridge-based games, just because they literally stuffed as much content into it as they possibly could. But yeah, really, I would say video game music took off with the advent of the PS1 and disc-based consoles in general, because
even the Xbox too come along as well.
This what's interesting is one of the landmark JRPGs, Final Fantasy VII, was actually slated to be developed for the N64.
Oh yeah, I heard about this.
But what ended up happening, well, originally it was slated to be developed for the SNES. So there's actually some screenshots out there of a sprite-based version.
Really?
And it was developed it was developed in parallel with Chrono Trigger.
Oh yeah.
But what ended up happening was basically the Chrono Trigger team needed more help, and they saw that as the priority, so they shifted so they put Final Fantasy VII on the shelf and put all their energy into developing Chrono Trigger. But anyway, they were originally going to develop, when they picked up Final Fantasy VII, they had completely revamped the whole vision of the game, and one important element was the soundtrack. The creator of the game absolutely wanted full orchestral soundtracks on the game, and that just wasn't possible on a cartridge.
Yeah.
And so they made the decision to jump ship from Nintendo to Sony, and history was made.
History was made for sure. And I think it's interesting going and looking at that time frame in that era, because it's like, and that's why the PS1 eventually went out in the end, is because there was so much. It was like we were talking about on the games podcast when we were doing that, where like the Sony made a call that was really smart in the foresight of everything. And Nintendo was, I would say, like Nintendo does, very prideful in their strategies. And it ended up kind of biting them in the butt in the end. But out of the innovation of technology, we get stuff like FF7. We get stuff like Twisted Metal. All these things that were able to work on a disc-based console in the PS1. But also with the N64, Rareware was really a champion of that technology and really was like a master of cramming stuff on and making it work. I mean, Donkey Kong 64, which is, not a great game by any standards, but it's got a good soundtrack, and they were able to cram so much on there. Same thing with Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie, and the fact that they were able to really extract so much out of the hardware is amazing to me, and a feat in engineering. And with PC side of things, you have stuff like Age of Mythology, and it's such a good soundtrack, and it's not too long. There's only 12 tracks. I would just recommend the two, like Flavor Cats and Adult Swim. A lot of people, I think, would be a fan of Ace of Balladan or whatever that track is called. But it's like if you're trying to like code, or if you're trying to do some work on the side and you just want a chill soundtrack, this is your one.
If you want a soundtrack that's like the perfect definition, I think, in my opinion, of ambience, background ambience, then Age of Mythology might be your jam.
And it's just busy enough of a soundtrack to get work done. It's not like a lullaby that'll get you going to sleep.
Yeah.
Although I would definitely put some of them on my, to sleep, like my sleepy mix or whatever. But again, Age of Mythology, I hold a very special place in my heart. And some of these games do, and some I haven't even played all the way, but we'll go through that as we go through it. So speaking of which, David, what is your number 2?
All right. So for my number 2, I'll kind of make a little segue. We'll stick with the SNES. So I talked about in with Link to the Past, how they managed to do so much with so little. And so in keeping with that sort of spirit, my next pick would have to be Super Mario World for the SNES.
Ooh, classic.
Ooh. Yes.
So yeah,
You're bringing all the classics.
well, I mean, I am. I'm older. I am old,
Yeah,
a
you're
bit older
definitely-
than
yeah, you're a
either
bit
of
older
you.
than
So
us,
my
yeah.
so my experience growing up playing video games is probably different than your guys's. But yeah, so for a little background information, Super Mario World was the flagship launch title for the SNES. It was the direct follow-up to the smash hit Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yahoo!
And if I was gonna pick my most played game out of everything, it would probably have to be Super Mario World. I played that game more time than I can count. Like I remember not playing it for years, and then I don't even remember what I was doing, but like I was hanging out with a family who I was friends with, and one of their kids booted up Super Mario World on like their DS or whatever. And there was, and I remember like, oh, I used to play this game, and then he like gave it to me. He's like, hey, you want to play a couple levels? And I played it. It was like it never left.
Aww.
Like I knew all the secrets, and I had never even played the game for years.
Wow.
Nostalgia washes over you
So
like a
yeah,
storm.
it was like, so basically, yeah, pretty much. I mean, if there's anything that I go nostalgia like Gaga for nostalgia wise, it's Super Mario World. But
not Kirby's Dream Course.
that's an entirely different topic.
That's an entirely different
That's on a whole
podcast.
nother level.
But yeah, Super Mario World, as far as most time spent playing a game, Super Mario World would be my number one. And so on to the music. What I find so striking about the music of the game is that it's very minimalistic in terms of how they approached it. So you have your overworld themes, which are all different.
Yeah.
But then you have your in-level themes, which like the NES predecessors, you have different themes tied to different environments in the levels. So you have a cave theme, you have a castle theme, you have a ghost house theme, you have a mountainous theme, you have more like a plains theme kind of thing. But what's really amazing about the music of Super Mario World is that all the in-level themes are more or less based on the same melody. So it gets a little bit different when you get to the ghost house and the castle themes. They're a little bit different, but you can still see the connection back to the main melody of the other ones. And again, like the Zelda theme, it's a very short loop. It doesn't take very long before it's repeating itself over and over again.
Yeah.
And yet, it's, as someone who's played this game more hours than I could possibly count, like, I never found myself tuning out the music or turning down the music or wishing it had different music. It just, every time I booted up the game, that music was always there to kind of help me propel me through the level, bring excitement,
Yeah.
And it's the same with the overworld themes. They're very short, very repetitive, but they're all very pleasant to listen to, and they kind of evoke the proper imagery for each different world that you visit in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I wanted to talk about with Super Mario World and music specifically is the Special World theme. So, for those who aren't aware, there are certain secret exits that take you to warp stars scattered throughout the world. And these warp stars take you to what is called Star World. And Star World has its levels. And then you get to the final level of Star World, which, looking at just the world map of Star World, it looks like it just connects you back to the first warp star. And that's that. But what's actually going on is you find the secret exit to the final level of Star World, and it takes you to, and it opens up another warp star that takes you to Special World, which is a collection of more out there levels. And they have weird names, like, because all the other levels are named like, you know, Donut Plains #1 or Forest of Illusions #2, or, you know, stuff like that. This the levels in Special World are named things like Funky and Groovy and Awesome.
And Ghost House 666.
They really went all out in these in all aspects, it sounds like.
But yeah, so when you first get to Special World, it's got this like sort of almost like Calypso kind of theme. It's really repetitive. Isn't nothing too special, but there's a secret feature where if you listen to it loop enough times, what happens is it changes and it launches into a steel drum version of the original Mario Bros. Theme from the NES.
Oh, really?
Oh, I've heard this. I've heard this track before. People have played it online.
Yes. So, and so this is kind of the reason why I picked this game, is because I remember as a kid, I would just load up the game and go on over to Special World and just put it on so I could just hear that song again. And so, I mean, you guys are a little bit younger than me, so maybe you have different experiences regarding that, but I'm kind of curious to ask was there any game growing up where you booted up the game just so you could listen to the music?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what was yours, Lexi?
The only ones that the ones that come to mind that I can think about right now are Super Smash Brothers Brawl, because they had all the music tracks, and I would wake up early on Saturday mornings just to listen to some of those tracks, especially like the ones I wasn't sure about, because there were some Japanese ones. And I remember specifically, I'm not trying to call you out on this, Jake, but I remember specifically because on Brawl, like they would shuffle the songs and you could go in and have the option of showing which ones you're going to play the most. And I remember you saying, "Oh, that's a stupid song," or something to the that equivalent. And so I woke up super early and I kept the TV like really low just so I could listen to it. I'm like, you know what? I kind of like this, but I never told anyone because I didn't want to get.
What track was it?
It was a song from Pikmin, and I don't remember what it was, but it was some Japanese song, and it was just like really quiet. I couldn't even tell you the name of it unless I saw it.
Pikmin song.
I
mean, sounds kind of retarded, you know, if you're asking me.
Oh my gosh, Jake.
Pikmin, you know.
You just upset the whole Pikmin fandom.
Oh, the Sonic fans are already after me, Lexi. Let me be real. So Smash Bros. Anything else? Or
the only one I can think about
like Harvest
is
Moon. I remember a lot.
I mean, yeah, some tracks in Harvest Moon, but like those were like, eh. I mean, yeah, I like to listen to them now, but like as a kid, I was just like, eh. The other one I can think about is Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, because I really like the soundtrack to that game. That's actually on my list. But it's just like they're different. I think one reason I liked it was because the only Pokemon games we had growing up were Pokemon Blue, Pokemon Emerald, and then someone gave us XD Gale of Darkness.
It was for like a birthday or something. I remember.
Yeah. And like,
and that was the main one we played for. Console Pokemon game.
That was the first Pokemon game I actually ever beat.
Oh, you did beat it. Oh, dang.
Yeah, I beat it in 2020 because I had a lot of time on my hands. But yeah, it's just, I think one reason I liked it was because it wasn't pixelated or chiptune. It didn't sound like the Game Boy. It sounded like, it was like MIDI, and it was obviously music mostly done by on a keyboard and stuff, but I liked how it didn't sound like the Game Boy. It sounded like not orchestrated, but yeah, that kind of thing. And I remember going to some places and I would just leave the controller there and just sit there for a while listening to the music.
I remember, I think for me, the game that I would probably go to first, because I'm really been trying to think of like a good example, but I think the number one example for me, like putting in a game and specifically going to seeking out a soundtrack, David, is specifically two games. One was Fusion Frenzy on the OG Xbox, because you could go and find the soundtrack in the settings, and you can listen to the Game Over song, which is on there, which is when you at the end of your campaign or whatever.
That's a
and
good
I always
song.
loved that. And so it's specifically Fusion Frenzy and probably Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, which Lexi, surprisingly, I do not have on my list.
What?
But it is an honorable mention.
I mean, that's not on my list either, but really?
Yeah, so I was really debating on putting Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, which is the GameCube Fire Emblem game. I love the game so much for so many other reasons. The music, I would say, is arguably one of them. And it has a lot of great tracks, especially like if you go into the fan base of Fire Emblem, the best set track is Oliver's theme, which I cannot remember the name of, but it's like a...
Oh, I hated that theme. It was
of
like,
the creepy priest that's obviously got a thing for beans with wings and everything.
Oh my God.
It's really like disturbing, this guy, and his theme was like
harpsichord.
It was a harpsichord.
It was nothing but like 50 harpsichords, and I hated it.
You hate harpsichords? Why do you hate harpsichords?
No, we just be listening.
What do you got against harpsichords? What they ever do to you?
We just be
Are
playing
you
the game.
racist against harpsichords?
Do you not like stringed instruments, Lexi? Did you know a piano was a stringed
Did you know your mother played a harpsichord?
Mom played a harpsichord?
Yeah, don't you remember she had a harpsichord and she played it? She played it at church one time.
I remember.
What?
Yeah, she has a harpsichord that she always wanted to play in church. I think she played it like once.
Yeah, she played
She
it.
has a harpsichord?
She does.
So I think.
Yeah, is that
Are
really,
you sure?
Is that what it's called, Lexi? Because it looks like a mandolin.
Okay,
or
wait.
something.
I think it's an electric harp.
No,
I don't.
Okay, no, I know what she has.
You know what you're talking about?
I know what she
Okay.
has.
What is it?
It's
What
an
is it?
auto harp.
Auto harp. Okay.
That's what it sounds like. It
See,
sounds like a gosh darn
what does a
auto
harpsichord
harp.
look like, David? Like it's
A
not something you can hold in
harpsichord
your
is
hand.
like-
No,
Piano.
a harpsichord is a keyboard-based instrument.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
But
say.
Harpsichord.
the main difference between a piano and a harpsichord is the piano has the strings stretched taut and a hammer strikes the string,
Okay,
causing it to resonate.
Yeah.
A harpsichord has a little quill type thing on the lever, which as you press the key plucks the string.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
It's like a harpsichord and auto harp, and I hated his theme.
That's not specifically the track I would go to, but I think again, Path of Radiance, great soundtrack, even better game. But I don't have it on my list because I only have 5 spots. It probably would have been like my 8th or 9th or whatever, but I'm only doing 5. So
Now that I think about it, I remember waking up on early Saturday mornings because I did this a lot. I would wake up early Saturday mornings
to the GameCube and the Wii,
yeah,
and Xbox.
And I remember listening to the music for that Fire Emblem game because we had it on the GameCube.
Yeah.
And then another game that I just randomly remembered was Knight's Journey of Dreams, because if you unlock the true ending, you get the music. And so I would go and listen to the boss music because I'll bring this up later.
And this was a Wii game, by the way.
It was a remaster of Nights into Dreams that was on the Sega Genesis. And it eventually...
The Dreamcast.
Oh,
Not
the Dreamcast.
Genesis, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Nice was a 3D game that came in during the time of the... It wasn't the Saturn.
It was...
No, it was
it was the Dreamcast.
It was the Dreamcast.
Yeah, it was a Dreamcast.
So
because it looked like it was from a Dreamcast.
yeah, so the Saturn was more like
I didn't know if it was like an X32 expansion game or not, but it's definitely
the Saturn was more
yeah.
of like the PS1 N64 era, and the Dreamcast was technically part of the PS2 Xbox GameCube version generation, except Sega beat them all to the punch, and it's kind of underpowered compared to the other.
well, David, like there's a Nights in Dreams game on the Wii. and it's got voice acting. It's got a whole storyline.
Yes, I remember that.
You know about this game?
Yes.
You know how bad the voice acting was on that game?
I've never played it.
Oh, it's so
You
bad.
want to know something hilarious?
They loved
I
playing
found
that
out.
growing up.
You want to know something hilarious? I found out about Knight's voice actor.
Who was it?
So I don't remember her name. I think her name's like Talia or something. I could be wrong.
I'm gonna look that up.
So she is not only I believe she's the voice of Crystal in Star Fox Assault.
Oh, cool.
But she's also like the voice that they needed for Chell in Portal 1 and 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, Chell doesn't talk.
No, but like the jumping and the gasps, that's her. That's her listing on IMDb.
So
I mean, somebody's got to do that.
Yeah.
Julicia Aguria?
If I saw her picture, I would know it. But she got
What
like
about
brown
Jews?
hair.
No, I said Julissa Aguria or whatever. I don't know. It's Italian or something.
Please take that out.
Anyway, David, do you have anything else to say about Super Mario World specifically?
No, I think that pretty much caps it off for me.
Okay. All right. Well, let's head over to Lexi. Lexi, what do you got for us? Number 2.
Well, I was going to go with this one. I had a number 2 up because I was talking about No Straight Roads, but you know what? I'm just going to jump and go to number 3. I'll go back to number 2 next round.
Okay. All right.
Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness.
What a game.
The Nintendo GameCube. And the funny thing about this, though, is that most people remember Pokemon Coliseum, not the one on Nintendo 64, mind you, because there were 2 Pokemon Coliseum games, which were where you would hook up your Game Boy to the 64 and play either mini games or you would fight. And so the same company that did those on the Nintendo 64, I think it was Genius Sonority. They did GameCube games, and the first one they did was Coliseum. And what's funny is that most of the battle music when you fight another person with like 2 controllers in the game, when you play those, when they play those, I didn't know this until I played through Pokemon Emerald a few years ago, is that they're the battle music for the gyms in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Battle against trainers in Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and against the champion in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And that's just in the versus mode. It was
all the same era too.
Yeah.
Basically.
And so they like kind of sort of reorchestrated it, but not really, you know. But like XD Gale of Darkness, I feel does a better job in most every way because it was an improvement.
It was 100% improvement in every way.
Yeah. So
except for maybe the battle system. The same thing.
I mean, when you play against another person or when you hook the Game Boy up to the GameCube, that's a bit of a mess to maneuver
and get going, yeah.
Which I just recently learned about the last few weeks when.
Oh yeah, because you were gonna try that too.
Yeah, I did.
You and Josh did it, I think.
Yeah,
right?
we transfer. I not only I battled him using the GameCube and the Game Boy, so it was kind of really fun to do that. But back to the music. The music is very like superior. I feel like they fixed a bunch of things. Most people have been bringing this up in regards to Scarlet and Violet, not just the music, not really the music, but the animation, because people were saying that the GameCube games did a better job at animating water and trees and the Pokemon models compared, like the fighting animation compared to Scarlet and Violet, which
that's so funny.
It's a topic for a different time.
Well, it's on the GameCube too, and it's just. Yeah, it goes into a different topic, which we won't get into right now. We don't want another fan base going after us, David, you know, like the Sonics. Them Sonics. I'm just going to call them that.
I feel like I missed something here. But
oh yeah, I don't know if David's part of it, but I definitely dead named the Sonic fan base for sure.
I'm scared to ask.
Yeah. Well, they haven't come after me yet, but I'm expecting mail. I'm expecting it. Anyway,
you're like, I got my hate mail box.
Come on. One of the packages is smoking. One of the packages, there's smoke coming out.
What's that ticking sound?
What's that ticking sound? It's a pipe bomb. Yay!
Yay!
I did that Potter Puppet Pals reference. That's really hard to say. In front of Stephanie in a youth group.
Oh no!
And I was like, "You never heard of Potter Puppet Pals, Stephanie?" She's like, "No." Oh my god!
That's like an internet classic.
It's an internet YouTube classic. Oh my god! Know what I'm talking about, David?
No.
What? No. Potter Puppet Pals. I'm not going to go too deep into it. I'm just going to say it was a YouTube series.
No.
Yeah,
Yes, I know
made
what
by
you're
a bunch
talking
of
about.
high school students or
I
whatever.
never actually watched it, but I've heard of it. I've heard of
They
it.
did little skits with little Harry Potter puppets.
I still quote
finger
them
puppets.
to this day. Like,
and they kind of been imbued in my brain for a while. And I'm not even a Harry Potter person.
Me
I'm not even
either.
a fan of it. But it's just, I remember Allie and Chelsea downloading the videos and watching them off of
oh
YouTube.
my gosh, yeah.
And it's just, it's the one that's the I'm talking about is the one where it's like the ticking noise.
It's the mysterious,
ticking noise.
Yeah, my version of that was the Harry Potter cartoons by I believe Oni.
Stop, Ron.
Yeah,
Stop
it, Ron. Stop. Ronald Weasley.
Oh
It's
god.
my
Olivia
gosh.
Shaw.
Those are the kind of videos people would show their friends after they went to go see New Moon and Eclipse in theaters.
And Harry Potter,
And
what is
Harry
it?
Potter,
The Deathly Hallows Part
Deathly
1
Hallows
and 2.
Part 1. Yeah, that's what they would show them. So, is there anything back to Gale of Darkness? Or because Coliseum's the one that everybody loves. Everybody like looks back
With the
on.
guy on the motorcycle.
The guy on the motorcycle.
He has his two
And he's silver hair, and he's
evolutions.
got his two Eevees.
Espion and
As
Umbreon.
dogs. I don't know. Epsilon and Umbreon. But you have Gale of Darkness, which is a spiritual. It's a sequel to it.
Yeah, because it takes
And
place
it's-
5 years after
I
Coliseum.
didn't know that, really.
Yeah, because in the game you live in this lab, and everyone at the lab is trying to figure out how to purify the Pokemon.
Yeah, because they're
Shadow
imbued with-
Pokemon.
Shadow Pokemon. They're imbued with darkness. or
Yeah,
something.
and so like
Which is a cool concept.
They will follow any advice you give. They have ultimate moves.
They're
They
easily
do not run out of
manipulated.
moves.
Yeah. They're
So-
basically like the concept, David. I don't know if you've ever heard of Gale of Darkness.
No.
But it's basically like the concept is there's a manufactured sickness that is imbued in Pokemon that is spread out throughout the land. And it's basically shadow Pokemon are the result. They're basically Pokemon, but they have a darkness around them, an aura. And this aura makes them easily manipulated, and they can be controlled through the shadowy kind of thing. It's really interesting now looking back at it, but it's your whole goal of the game was to find Pokemon, catch them, but also purify them. So it brought a different aspect to the Pokemon collecting kind of thing. Like you're not just collecting them, you're kind of saving them
There's-
in a way.
Interesting.
There's
So and this was the last console entry in the Pokemon games till the Switch comes along, basically.
not true actually, because the Wii had the same company made a battle simulator called Battle Revolution.
Well, yeah, but that's more like a fighting game. And you had Pokken when the Switch came out and on the Wii U, but that I don't know if that really counts.
I mean,
It's
there's
not a mainline Pokemon.
There's also some WiiWare games that.
It's not a mainline Pokemon game, but
I mean, yeah, but you can still hook up to the mainline Pokemon games. That's what the nice feature of those things were.
yeah.
But Gale of Darkness, it just has a really good soundtrack. All the themes, they went hardcore with it.
Mhm.
And the word going around the internet is that the people who made the game didn't really know about Pokemon. Like they didn't
Really?
like they weren't people from Nintendo. Some of them had grown up playing Pokemon, and so I think the directors was like, well, if the people who play Pokemon, if they're teenagers now, because this was like the early 2000s, they said, well, if they're like tweens and teenagers now, they should have a different story. And so that's why the protagonists are all kind of a little older. The story's a bit
They're
darker.
Like 13, 14, 15.
Except for what's his name?
Mirror B.
Mirror B. I almost said DK West, but I'm going back to No Straight Road, so we're not going to go back there. But Mirror B is
Wait until you
his
see-
theme.
David,
So
I want you to Google Mirror B right now from Pokemon Gale of Darkness. And
Do it.
just look at what this character looks like.
do it.
Continue, Lexi.
Yeah. So in the original Coliseum, Mirror B was more of a bigger threat. He ran this underground city in the game, and you had to battle trainer
Name's Mirror. and
Mirror
then-
B.
Yeah, and B.
And he
just
had
the
these
letter B.
dancing Pokemon. And the specific reason is because when he throws the Pokemon out, they look like they're dancing.
Yeah.
So that is like, it actually goes well when he throws them out in XD. When he throws them out, they go with his theme.
And he
his,
has the theme.
his theme is one of the best music. Oh my gosh. I have listened to it for hours. There's a 30-minute mix on YouTube, and I have listened to that like I think more times than I can count because it slams. It is just like it's like funky disco,
A little bit of rock. And,
little rock, like there's a guitar solo.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just, oh my gosh, yeah. And I can't listen to remixes of it because it just doesn't do it justice.
David, did you get a chance to see what this character
I
is
did.
like? Yeah, what is your first reactions?
I don't think I have any words. That's,
You should have seen him what he looked like in the other game.
Wait, he was in Coliseum as well?
Yeah, he was in the
I didn't know
original.
that.
Yeah, he
Oh my
ran.
gosh.
He was one of the big baddies. He was like an admin, and like
Okay.
he ran this underground city. When you go to fight him in that game, he has all these Pokemon dancing around him, and he's dancing in the middle of this Coliseum. And yeah, he's wearing all yellow. So
whoa.
that's an improvement in XD Gale of Darkness. He is an improvement. Believe
He still
it
has
or-
his V-neck. He still has it, you know? He's got the giant fro that's a
the
Pokeball.
deep V-neck.
The deep V-neck, David. Yeah. Yeah. So, and he's got
And-
bell-bottom jeans, or not
Yeah,
bell-bottom.
Bell-bottoms.
Bell-bottom.
the
Bell-bottoms.
Pokeball colored fro is really what just kind of like
and it jiggles.
And he's
I
thin,
just
as
like-
he's thin as a twig as well.
just like maybe I just looked at him and was like, why?
Exactly.
Why?
if you think
Just why?
Just why?
You should have seen his he's like, I don't remember what he did. He moves like this during the battle. And then when he gets defeated, he does the wave and then he goes, ugh, and he falls down. I sound
Oh
really
my gosh.
stupid right now, but you have to know it, okay?
Oh man. Yeah, Genius Sorority was the developers of the game. I'm trying to find a composer. Oh, here it is. I did find the composer. It's Tsukasa Tawada was the guy's name.
Mikasa es Sukasa?
No, Tsukasa Tawada was his name. But yeah, he's still alive, kicking, and brought us a really amazing legendary theme to a legendary character.
It's gold. It's a national treasure.
All
Anyway,
right, let's-
Jake, what about you?
It's definitely not Pokemon, that's for sure. I mean,
Aw.
oh man. Okay, let's see. Let me take a look at my list here. What do I want to go with next? All right, I'm gonna go with it. All right, so this is a game I have tried to get into so many times, but it's very impenetrable. It was the word I would use, is because it is a CRPG, a computer RPG through and through, kind of like of the older Baldur's Gate kind of variety. And it makes sense because this game, Divinity Original Sin 2, was created by sugar. I can't remember their name. I have to look it up. But it was made by the guys who made the most recent Baldur's Gate 3. And they went on and made, before that, made the Divinity games. And these were like classic CRPG style games. And they were pretty successful. And then Original Sin 2 came out and they ported it to console during the PS4 and Xbox One era. Pretty big. A lot of sales. Everybody called it the best RPG of all time next to Baldur's Gate and stuff like that. Like very held in high regard. And then number 2 comes out. I've not listened to the soundtrack to the first one, but the second one, oh my God, it is just...
Heavenly.
It's heavenly. It was the word I would probably use. Is well, maybe not heavenly, but anyway, the point is it's very, very special. And the reason why is, yeah, it's a fantasy RPG. You have all these different characters, but the trick with this game is when you're creating your character, and you could pick one of the main characters as your like playable character. But the thing is, you get to choose an instrument during your character creation process, and this instrument will carry through and will be part of your theme as you go through the game.
Oh, I think I remember this.
Yeah, so you have tracks like Gods of the Woke Spoken, and that track has a variety of versions for cello, for choir, for strings. It's whatever you picked in the menu in the very beginning, and this instrument carries on with the theme of the game as you progress through it.
Dude, that's
It's
amazing.
Yeah, and there's certain songs that, depending on what instrument you picked at the beginning of the game, will play in the style of what you chose. So if you chose strings, for example, you're getting a lot of your harpsichords, you're getting a lot of the piano, you're getting a lot of the violin and cello. But you also have the choir version that will play as well if you picked that at the beginning of the game. And it's custom character, or there's different characters as well. Red Prince is probably the famous, Red Prince's theme is probably the most famous theme from this game. It's I went through the soundtrack today and I was kind of listening to it and I was hopping around it. And I was listening to a lot of the tracks I don't usually listen to. And like my mind has been totally changed on this game in terms of the soundtrack, because it is just, I would consider it a masterpiece. And I've kind of breezed through stuff like the Baldur's Gate 3 soundtrack. Not as good. I need to spend more time listening to it because it sounds pretty great. But Divinity Original Sin 2, this was a soundtrack I found off of the main theme on YouTube I was recommended one day, and I had to immediately just download everything and put it on my phone and just listen to it. And it is so special. Full orchestra, full choir. It's very epic, and it really imbues feelings of not just adventure, but something dark is happening, and there might be a hope at the end. And Lexi, there's a theme in the game called the Queen's High Seas. And it's like this shanty kind of thing, like
Sign me up.
But then they introduce whistling into it, like a whistler, professional whistler goes into the song. And it's just a very pleasant, dutiful, kind of like the Hobbit 2003 soundtrack, the game, kind of like that era.
Okay, that makes
And my favorite track is probably the Queens of High Seas, but my most favorite track is Rebellion, which is the name of the town you go into in the game. And it's the one I played for you one time, David, and I was playing on the TV, and you said, what's going on with this track? It's very, like, the chords and are very simple. Like, the tune is very simple. Like, this is like what you would do when you're practicing, getting your guitar tuned up. But this is a main theme, and it works really well. Do you remember that at all?
I don't.
But anyway, this Rebellion theme is like, oh wow, it's so beautiful and peaceful, but also it's like grandiose as well at the same time. And it's just,
that's a good word.
It's Divinity Original Sin 2 is probably one of my most favorite soundtracks of all time, because it really brings just a sense of adventure and like grand role-playing type of stuff, kind of like
something you would definitely want on a D&D soundtrack.
Exactly.
Or like in a playlist in the background.
Perfect example. Yes, this is definitely a D&D. Like if you are hosting a game one night and you're the DM, or if you got the speaker hooked up, you got to play the soundtrack, because it is prime D&D material.
I think I've stumbled into a few D&D playlists on Spotify, and I think I've come across, I think I remember seeing like Divinity Original Sin 2.
I remember when we were playing with, did a campaign with Ian and a bunch of guys, and it was like he would play stuff like The Witcher soundtrack. He would play stuff from like
Skyrim.
I think the older Baldur's Gates, and just a bunch of other soundtracks. But it was like really, really like this soundtrack. I can't recommend it enough. Like and I have even played probably a total of 6 hours of this game, and this game's like probably a 100-hour game. Because like the reason why I can't get into it is like I can't wrap my mind around the concept of the combat and how it works. I really need to go and like watch tutorials. This game, like if you're not used to CRPGs, if you haven't played a Baldur's Gate, maybe one or two, you're not gonna know what to do when you get into this game. Like you're starting on a ship. It's all, you're walking around, you're talking to people, and then like the turn-based combat starts. You're like, oh crap, and you have a kind of like in D&D, you have a like a 10 square thing or whatever. You can shoot your arrow or walk over to, and you can only go so far. And so it's really heavily based off the D&D system, but it's like
there's even a guy behind a board with a dice.
No, that's Baldur's Gate 3. So in Baldur's Gate 3, their follow-up to this. So this was 2017. Divinity Original Sin 2 came out. Like people love this game. Rave reviews. It sold a bunch of copies on Steam and GOG. They released a definitive edition, which has much more, all the fixes and all the DLC,
all the bells and the whistles,
and then in 2020 or 2019, they announced their early access for Baldur's Gate 3 and that they're making it. And everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe they're bringing back Baldur's Gate. Oh my goodness. And it's going to be an early access. I can't wait to buy it. And it comes, I believe, in 2021, they released the early access. And yeah, they have the first act in there. But then come 2023, the full game releases. And PS5 release as well. And just the internet goes crazy over Gaga of this game, because it's a true D&D RPG, but translated to a much more
grandiose scale.
No, it's translated to a much more comprehensible scale for people who aren't familiar with the D&D system. It's much more approachable. Divinity Original Sin 2 is kind of like not as approachable, but I really want to just spend some time and get sucked into this, because the story I hear is really good. This is one Andrew would play and tell me about it, and I'm like, oh my God, this sounds awesome.
I think I remember Andrew showing us it.
Yeah, because he would show us that in Pillars of Eternity, which was made by Obsidian. And God, I can't remember the name of the people that made this, but
is it Bethesda?
No. It's an independent studio, And the cool thing about Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity Original Sin 2 is that they went ahead and they self-funded it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Baldur's Gate 3 they had the license from Wizards of the Coast, who owned the D&D license. And they basically had to pay a license fee for that and Wizards of the Coast get a cut for Baldur's Gate 3. But everything else goes to Larian. Larian Studios is their name.
Okay.
And it's just so impressive, and I'm really excited to see what they do, and I'm glad the success of Baldur's Gate 3 lets them do whatever they want next. So anyway, that's all I got to say about Divinity Original Sin 2. Listen to Revelin, which is a theme for a city.
Yeah.
And it's just a really good time. And it's good stuff. So anyway, David, I'm going to pass it on to you. What's your number 3?
Tell us.
All right. So for number 3, we're going to go back to the future.
All right.
Back in time.
Got to go back in time.
So we're going to catapult ourselves from the SNES era all the way to the original Xbox. So my next pick is Halo 2.
Oh.
What a beautiful voice. Or no, what's
Hearing that in a
Batman?
Batman?
Dark Knight Rises. Freaking
beautiful
yeah,
voice.
no, yeah. What a lovely voice.
When we went to go see Dune 2, Lexi, there was
Oh,
a trailer for that Bike Riders movie with Tom Hardy.
Oh,
and it says
no.
like Chicago, 1950 something. And I'm like, I was born in Chicago.
I was born in this.
I was born in Chicago.
Molded by it.
Molded by it. The wind of Chicago molded me.
All right. So
Anyway, Halo 2.
Halo 2. So, as someone who spent the majority of their early life playing 16-bit games, Halo 2 kind of represented the first game, the first like 3D game where the soundtrack really, really grabbed me, specifically because it was something that could not have been done on a 16-bit console.
Yeah.
So that opening theme with the choir is like, as someone who grew up on the most epic video game music they'd ever heard was A Link to the Past. Like that opening Halo theme was like revelatory. And I remember the real standout for me was the music that plays during the Scarab battle.
Oh yeah.
Like it was something that it was like a whole nother level beyond 16-bit music, but in a way that it didn't sound necessarily like a movie soundtrack or anything. It was something that you listened to while you played the game, and it like propelled you through the game.
So it was like one of those, like, I'm pretty sure that like everyone's had those moments where like they're doing something and then all of a sudden they hear that music and it kind of makes you like stop everything. And like it just kind of like it lures you in kind of situation.
Yeah. I remember I loved that song so much. Anytime I played the campaign and I like played the last level and beat it, I would always like wait through the credits till it got to that song because when it got to that particular rendition of that song in the credits, it was like it kicked it up a notch. You could hear like the guitar riffs of Mr. Steve Vai just like chugging along. It was something else, man. I remember anytime I played the last level of Halo 2 and the game was over, I would sit through the last cutscene and the credits just so I would get to that, just so I could hear that.
Yeah, and I think the name you're looking for that track is the Mjolnir mix, is what it's called. And yeah, that track goes hard. Like Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, those guys, when they made this, man, like the first one was great and it has this very special feel to it. But this second one is like, oh my God. Like,
it's a whole nother
it's
level.
a whole nother level. And the fact that they made Halo 2 in like a little less than 2 years, because this is 2004 it came out and the first one was 2001. And they made the game basically, David, like partway through. and then they had to remake it because the engine wasn't compatible with the Xbox console and with like multiplayer of what they were trying to do. And it was like, that means they had to redo a bunch of tracks, a bunch of the aspect. The whole Scarab fight you're talking about was kind of like the E3 demo we were looking at, and the like before that was going to happen. And then just they had to scrap and remake the whole game in like 18 months. It's crazy. And the first one's very similar, the first Halo development, but like, you're right. Halo 2 is so special. And like when you boot up the game and the Bungie logo comes up and the guitar riff hits, you're like, oh man, I'm ready to shoot some grunts, man. Like,
That's some good stuff there.
got some good stuff over here. Like, yeah, it gets real when this theme starts playing, man. Like, oh, it's so
I've never
good.
really like been interested in playing Halo. I always knew that it was like kind of you guys's and like Adelaide. I think Adelaide was the only girl I think that ever played it that I knew. But like that didn't surprise me. She liked Transformers and iRobot and all that jazz. But like if there's like I've heard the music and I was like I'm not gonna deny that's a good soundtrack. So
Yeah, and then they kind of just it's so cool because with the Halo soundtracks, it's like they kind of just remix a lot of different things as we go into like 3 and Reach and ODST. It's kind of ODST's own thing, but when you get to 2, it's like its own thing, and then you get to 3 and it's just a remix of everything from 1 and 2, but it's its own kind of like with a little bit of different flair. But it's like it's just the layering, the transitional stuff in it, the themes of it all. Like Halo 2 specifically, I think of when you're landing on I can't remember the mission, but when you're landing on the ring and in the drop pods and everything with the ODSTs, and like I don't think music starts playing right away, but as you go through the Jackal Sniper Forest or the Jacker Schneipel Forest, you're as my dyslexic brain will call it. Gotta get back past the Jacker Schneipel Forest. Shout out to Matt when we were playing Halo 3 Lasso.
Gosh.
I was like, Jackers, get the Jackers. I was like, I can't focus right now. I can't see my gun. We're playing Lasso. So anyway.
I was going to say something that only dyslexic people would understand, but I would realize it's not appropriate. And Mom listens to this. So
oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. I got no hands. I'm just talking into a microphone. Anyway,
It's okay. We can be real.
We can
here.
be real.
Oh my
here,
gosh.
Yeah. Dave, is there anything else that sticks out to you in Halo 2 specifically, David?
Yeah, I would say
Like finish the fight, or even what do you think of the fight between the brutes and the elites in the end, and that whole play?
yeah, story wise, I would say
like the song that plays during that fight.
Yeah. Story wise, and
yeah.
the way the music, the way the music flows with what's going on in any given level or scene or what have you is the entire soundtrack's a masterpiece in my mind. But what sticks out for me is definitely the Scarab battle theme, especially the post credits one with the
The guitar.
Oh yeah, good stuff.
Steve Vai, man. And it's the Breaking Benjamin song is what I'm thinking of, because that plays in the game.
There's a Breaking Benjamin song in Halo?
Yeah, toward the end of the game, you have like the elites and the brutes fighting each other as you're trying to go through the level, and you're kind of stuck in this giant like room with a bunch of them, and they're trying to kill each other, and then they're trying to kill you as well. And then this Breaking Benjamin song starts playing, like the instrumental version, and it's like, what the heck's going on? It's like, okay,
Like this game just got more epic.
more real, yeah. So anyway, that's a good choice. I like Halo 2. Yeah. Lexi, what's your number 3?
All right. This is the one I skipped. It would be A Hat in Time.
I knew you were gonna bring this up. This is a good soundtrack.
Yeah, you haven't played the game, and I know you listen to it.
I do. It got me through finals in college, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The whole soundtrack.
I remember being in the library with you before we went off to our classes, and you had your laptop out, and I look over, and you're just listening to A Hat in Time.
Pop in my head.
And I'm like,
yeah, I'm gonna ace this quiz. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a game I love. It's basically like Banjo and Kazooie, where it's a 3D platformer, and like there's really just one objective, and you do side things along the way.
3D platformer, collectathon.
Collectathon, yeah. And I believe
What are you collecting anyway? I don't even remember.
So you're collecting hourglasses because they're magical, and they can actually make you go back in time.
Oh.
But they fuel the little girl, your main character, whose name is Hat Girl. or Hat Kid, and it fuels her ship, so that way her spaceship, so she can go home. But then they all fly out on the planet, and you have to go through different things
worlds
to get not worlds, they're all on the same planet. It took me 2 years of playing the game to realize that this was all on the same planet. I thought it was different worlds because I was just like, oh, like Banjo-Kazooie and this. And then I was like, oh, shoot, it's the same planet.
Well, what kind of tracks stick out to you? Because there's quite a few in there.
So,
there's
like,
so many good ones.
So I remember hearing about
there's
the
like
game.
80 tracks, by the way. There's a lot in this game.
Not including the DLCs.
Not including the DLCs.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
But I would say, so like, this is kind of the same way I got introduced to No Straight Roads. Is I found a video about it suggested on YouTube, and I found out that what's his name, Youngstown. What's his name?
Youngstown, I think.
Who did the Melee rap?
Yeah.
He's the voice of one of the bad guys, and so I just kind of skimmed through the boss fights, and I heard the music, and I was just like, okay, this is actually really good. And Youngsville, or I don't know.
Youngtown,
Youngtown. When I heard he plays a guy that you literally have to sell your soul to. It's not my favorite part of the game. And then like there's a whole level where it's just a horror game and this lady's chasing you through this mansion.
It's freaking scary. It's like
could not play that game until like
I was watching you play
years.
that level and Josh playing that level, and I'm like, I don't know if Josh should be playing this level. This is kind of freaky.
He had to play the level for me because I couldn't play it. I went through that level like 5 times to get collectibles, and then I had people comment online after I made a video, and they're like, you do know there's a secret entrance at the start of the level that takes you to the end of the level? And I'm just like,
actually, there's
they're pushing up their glasses, and I was just like,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you pleb. But anything specifically, because
that guy, his name is Snatcher in the game.
Yeah,
when you have to
Snatcher,
fight him, the track is called "Your Contract Has Expired," and the normal track for it is one of the most like insane boss fights, and then it gets faster. They speed it up, and I just like it. It's just because like it's the only level where you can't use your hat. He takes your hat and you can't use any of the abilities that you have with your hats. So like one of them makes you go really fast. One of them stops time. You can't use any of them. Even when you do a later mode where you have to do all the bosses in a row, you can't use your hat still. So you have to learn, you have to know what you're doing at this point in the game to jump and dodge. I got it down to a science, to the point where when me and Josh were playing it, we were racing each other to see who could get it done the fastest, and I beat him in that way. And he's like, how? And I'm just like, I have played this game so much. A lot of the tracks that I personally like are from the second level. And there's a part of the game where you have to go into a movie studio that's split in half. So half of the studio is run by these penguins from the moon. The other half is run by a bunch of owls and they each make different movies.
Bird battle.
The penguins only make sci-fi movies. And then the owls always make Western movies.
Interesting.
And you end up being the star of 4 of the levels are you being the stars of the movie. And one of them's a murder mystery. And it's really funny.
There's a lot of creative stuff in this game. Like, shout out to the developers who made this, because it's like, it's really special from what I see. I need to play it. I actually need to sit down and play it. But
dude, you need to. It's so fun. We can play 2-player on it.
Oh, that's right. They added multiplayer, which is like amazing. I can't believe they did.
It's really cool.
I would just say, going through the soundtrack, Picture Perfect, the remix by with
Insane in the Rain.
Yeah, featuring Carlos Ein, who's also known as Insane in the Rain on YouTube. He does jazz covers on YouTube. Video game soundtracks. I think that would be mine, but also Subcon Forest as well. That's always a good soundtrack.
That is a good one.
But there's a track on here that I didn't know. There's some funny names. One of them, David, is called "You Are Now Legally a Bird."
Okay, so in the game, humans are not allowed in the studio, in the filming studio, and as you go
they're
through,
speciesists in this game.
So there are all these signs that say, do not break things, do not do this, do not do that. And you have to obviously break things to get through the level. And a little tally keeps coming up in the corner of the game that stacks up all this money that you owe to the studio for either knocking over a cardboard cactus or disrupting the, because you have to sneak behind the director. And if you disrupt the thing, you get charged for it and you lose a life. But You Are Now Legally a Bird is at the end of the level. And they go, oh, you could be the star of the show. And they go, here, let me just tear that up. And they take the paper and they tear it up and they take your picture. And that track is called You Are Now Legally a Bird because you have to draw a picture of, you take a picture of yourself and you get to draw on it, like with crayons. He goes, here's some crayons. Draw glasses or something on you. And the hilarious thing about that is that track specifically is that I started a new job back in January. And I have that track specifically on my playlist because I just chose a bunch of video game music that I'm like, okay.
Yeah, because you're playing it in the shop when you're working. Yeah.
So I didn't realize it until a few weeks ago. But every time I worked, which was like once to twice a week, and I would put my little playlist, Spotify playlist on, You Are Now Legally a Bird would come up every single day. And I was like, huh? And at first I thought about it and I was like, I've heard that every day I've worked here for the last 3 months now. It's a great track.
Yeah, Spotify's weird when it does that. It'll play like what you really love to re-listen to, and then like some random one that goes next or something like that. Yeah.
Spotify's strange because it'll play A Hat in Time, it'll play this, and then it'll go, take out the papers and the trash.
Oh, you don't get no spending cash. Anyway, we're going to copyright strike and keep going on that.
Another track, I did want to bring this up, is that another reason I found out about this game was because Plasma 3 Remixes, his name?
Oh, yeah, he does stuff.
He did the whole soundtrack.
He did the whole, oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then here's the thing.
He does a bunch of like video game remixes on YouTube, which are just great.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And then here's the other thing. The only track that's in the game that's not on the official soundtrack is the theme for the spaceship, where you're walking around and stuff like that. That's because that was done by a different composer. That was done by Grant Kirkhope, who did the music for Banjo-Kazooie. Mm-hmm. And that's separate. You have to go find that separately on like the streaming services and stuff like that, which I did not know until I had to look it up. Because I'm like, I realized one day, I was like, wait a minute, the spaceship theme isn't on the soundtrack. And it's super nice.
Quick side tangent. Grant Kirkhope does a cover of the Grunty's Battle from Banjo-Kazooie with, oh shoot, what's that guitar YouTuber name?
There's a lot of them.
I'm talking about like the metal, like the oh shoot, I can't remember the guy's name. I think it's like Family Jewels or something like that is what his name is.
I think
he does like a whole, like in real life, him and Grant Kirkhope like go together and they do like get their guitars out and they do a cover of Grunty's like battle in the end of Banjo-Kazooie. So anyway, sorry, total side tangent. Continue, Lexi.
That's okay. I would just have to say that the other tracks I really liked of the game are like, oh gosh, I like Welcome to Mafia Town, which is the very first level. That track is good. And then what's the other track? I do like almost every track in the movie levels. There's like one called The Big Parade, and that level is so stress inducing, but I love that music. You're jumping and you can't fall into the crowd, and that took me like a whole day of just trying to do it off and on. But one of my favorite all-time soundtracks from the game is called The Battle for Award 42, and that's at the end of the awards of the bird level, because you're trying to compete with the other directors to see which director is going to win. And I was a little heartbroken when I played the game because one of the penguin guy, DJ Grooves, which is voiced by, I don't remember his name, but he's from Team 4 Star, and he was in Dragon Ball Z Abridged and
really?
Yeah.
What?
And he was in Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, and that's the only reason I watched Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged. Was because he was in 2 or 3 episodes.
We need to have you on to talk about abridged animes.
Oh, yes, please.
That's a different topic.
Please. I would love that.
David has the experience with Dragon Ball Z Abridged. You have Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, and I have Kirby's Right Back at You Abridged.
So here's the thing. Because I watched the abridged of Yu-Gi-Oh! That actually made me want to watch the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, and I'm almost done with season 2.
Holy cow, really? Dang.
Yeah, they're on.
What are you watching it on?
Hulu.
Oh, it's on Hulu?
Yeah. Well, at least it was before the merge with Disney and all that.
Disney Plus, yeah.
But so in the game, depending on which director wins, you have to fight, which I thought it was the exact opposite. My brain thought, oh well, because they lost, you have to fight them. But so the ending theme is kind of a merge between the owl. I don't know what he is. He's kind of like an owl. and between the penguin guys. So it's like a bunch of guitar and it's really catchy. And then halfway, like there's a lot of things that happen in the boss fight that go back to the levels that you just played and stuff like that. Like in the big parade, there's a band that follows you and you can't let them hit you because they follow you.
They follow your path, yeah.
Yeah, and if you stop, they'll hit you and they'll actually take a life from you. And then the very end of the Battle for Award 42, the music goes dun dun dun, and then suddenly the parade guys appear with knives, and you have to run around still hitting the boss while you're trying to avoid that, and things are falling from the ceiling, and they're throwing saws at you. So it's insane. It's insane, but it's so fun. When me and Josh were playing through the levels, I had done that boss fight so many times. I knew exactly when they were going to attack, and like a crazy person, I just kind of just sat there with a smile on my face and just beat it in like under 5 minutes. So
yeah, it sounds pretty fun. Any final words on Hat in Time?
Play it.
Well, I'll try to get to it.
I mean, I should mention the DLC. The DLC does have some really good tracks. There's one where you have to join the cat mafia. And
of course, like one does.
The final level of the game is where because you're looking for the hourglasses and the cats keep taking them back. And so finally you
As
get
cats do.
As cats do.
And the one lady who's in charge of it, she's called the Empress. What happens is you get all your timepieces back. She sees you, and instead of attacking you, because if you do attack her in the normal game, she'll kill you with one blow. And she looks at you, she puts the speaker on, and she alerts all of her minions. She goes, I've put the bounty up for 1 million on Hat Girl. And she's like, and then she looks at you and she goes, you better run. And Hat Girl runs, and then you have to run through all of the levels in the metro, in the subways. And when you jump on the subways, the music gets faster. And that track is called Rush Hour. But then when you jump off the subways and you're running around normally, the normal track is called Calm Hour. So there are two different
there's
tracks
lots of merging, transitional stuff that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Nice.
But yeah, and then the other one is where you sink a ship and there's a bunch of bonus levels. So yeah. The music's really good. I would suggest the audience to go check it out.
Yeah. A Hat in Time.
Yes.
Cool indie game.
Anyway, what about you, Mr. Jake?
I'm going to go with my next pick. Totally same kind of game. No, not really. I'm going to a fighting game here. And I think some fighting games actually have some of the best soundtracks around. I mean, we've mentioned Smash Bros., which isn't really a fighting game.
But it has a lot of reorchestrated music.
Yeah, it has reorchestrated stuff.
That.
But I'm talking more like Street Fighter, Blaze Blue even, or heck, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, we've kind of discussed or we played, So I'm going to go with Killer Instinct, the reboot from 2013, which was a launch title for the Xbox One.
This brings back memories.
So, does it?
You would blast it on those speakers in your room. Oh, yeah.
So this soundtrack was made by a guy named Mick Gordon. And you might know that name because that name is from the same guy who made the Doom 2016 soundtrack of notoriety. And this guy is an Australian genius. He is just...
if ever there was one.
An Australian musical genius. He is just super brilliant, super talented.
You guys are going to have a whole country coming after you.
And I have a few... I love Australia. Some of my favorite YouTubers legit are Australians. Like you got Green Ham Gaming, which is a tech YouTuber, and then another tech YouTuber named Tech Yes City. So anyway, shout out to them. They're great. But anyway, you got Killer Instinct, 2013. Comes out, reboot of the franchise or whatever. And he went through and he took all the themes from Killer Instinct 1 and 2, which was on the SNES and the N64 and the arcade, of course, the arcade machine, of course. And he kind of just rejiggered and did his own thing for each and every one of the characters. The main theme, the instinct, is so good. The character selection scene is like, and it's like, oh man, this is great. And for those who aren't aware, if you're familiar with Mortal Kombat, it's very much so like a very weird set of characters with lots of influence from Chinese Hong Kong action films with characters from China and everything. Killer Instinct's more of the Japanese kind of side of that, where you have characters from Japan, but also from Native American mythology.
Yeah.
And you also have wacky out-of-space characters like a guy named DJ Club or whatever, and he's a boxer who comes in, and he's like basically Little Mac grown up. That's basically what he is. You also have a raptor of all things. It's like a tech rat has tech on him and like machinery, and he's like called Riptor.
He's like
you have
what is it?
You have in this new reboot they did a bunch of DLC characters. You have a Battletoad. A giant, muscly, gross-looking Battletoad character.
It's not from Battletoads, though, is it?
Yeah, this character is from Battle. It's one of the Battletoads.
Oh, really?
In the fighting game, you can be. What? Yeah, and there's like a Native American guy who's like. There's a couple of them too that are like super cool and have awesome themes. One more thing. There's a character from Gears of War, and of course, the Arbiter from Halo is in this game as a playable character.
What?
It's awesome, and each one has their own theme and everything. What I will say about this theme, going through it, because I only listened to like maybe 9 tracks that stand out to me, but I was going through the just one by one today, and I will say that each character's theme is so unique and just goes so hard, and it's just super enjoyable. A lot of it's real rocky, real metal, not maybe real metal, but like the guy I mentioned who's like a boxer, who's like Little Mac, he has an EDM/techno rap theme. Where he's like rapping in the background or whatever, and like Mick Gordon like orchestrated all of this. So there's like EDM, there's like techno, there's like rock, there's like heavy metal, there's all these different genres packed into this game, and it's just really amazing. And the specific tracks I'll recommend from Mick Gordon is Temperance and Vengeance. I don't know specifically what character this is supposed to be for.
Is that the skeleton?
No, there's also a skeleton who's a pirate skeleton who's
So-
got like a helm in his chest and everything. Like,
So-
this game's wacky and crazy.
So
and
like
it's just awesome.
the one, I'm sorry to interrupt. The one thing I remember hearing like a fact about this game, is the only fact about Killer Instinct that stuck with me, is that the skeleton dude has a specific, they used a specific instrument when they did his theme that is actually a flute or ocarina or something like that, made out of an actual human bone, because they wanted it to be very specific for this character. And that's the only fact I know about Killer Instinct.
Yeah, Mick Gordon, he did such a. It's called the song that's the rap one I'm talking about is called "I'm Back to Rise." Also, each track, one of these tracks is like 8 to 9 minutes long. They're all very long.
Yeah, they're very long.
And there's also a werewolf and stuff. Like, this game's crazy.
I mean, that's
but
not
I would say
surprising.
if you're gonna go search out the soundtrack, Hina Matum is one track I would recommend. Temperance and Vengeance, An Eagle's Call, which is actually from Cell Dweller and another guy, Cell Dweller and Atlas Plug, who were guys who did the DLC songs. So you have An Eagle's Call, which is like this epic Native American kind of chant, then just goes into heavy rock and just like continues through it.
Get subwoofers if you can and play it on
the
those.
reason why I want to highlight Killer Instinct the reboot is Mick Gordon kind of took what came before and just reimagined it all, but it all fits to what they were trying to do with this game. And it's also a very good fighting game. Like, I haven't put too much time into it, but I was doing the training mode and I was getting competent. I was actually learning how to play it. And Mortal Kombat, which I've also tried as well and try to learn the combos and everything, it's very wishy-washy. If you can easily misplace buttons, but if you misplace buttons, it's not as Mortal Kombat's more messy in the way it puts its combos together. This game is like one combo into another combo. It's kind of like Tekken or something like that when you go and do it. But anyway, that's all I'll say about Killer Instinct. Baller soundtrack. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's like it just, oh my gosh, it's, I don't know. There's something for everybody, as IGN would say in this soundtrack. But David, let's move on to number 4. What's your 4th pick?
All right, so my 4th pick will have to be. So I guess we're kind of going. It's kind of funny. I'm kind of going in chronological order here for mine, and I didn't really intend to, because none of none of these are like any particular, like, I like them more than the other ones. So, but yeah, we're going in chronological order, I guess.
What is
so
it?
my next game would have to be Cave Story.
Ooh,
okay.
okay.
So for those who are not in the know, and if you aren't, I pity you. No, I'm just kidding.
If you're clicking on this podcast called Video Game Music, I'm going to assume you're kind of into music or video games. So
one of the two.
One of the two,
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
So, but anyway, so Cave Story was a freeware was a freeware PC game released in the early 2000s by the Japanese developer Pixel. And so when I stumbled across Cave Story, it was like the whole game was like kind of a revelation to me, because it was like it brought me to that place of nostalgia where because it's basically a side-scrolling platformer, very old school 16-bit-ish looking graphics, and yet at the same time the game is designed in such a way where it really wouldn't work on a like it wouldn't have necessarily worked on the SNES just because the screen there's too much going on the screen. You need more detail than a CRT from back in the day could have provided. But the graphics are vaguely reminiscent of 8-bit or 16-bit games. And so it was like
it was kind of like Symphony of the Night Castlevania is a good example. Like that game ran on the PS1 at first, but it was a 2D side scroller.
Yeah,
and they had the freedom.
This is decidedly more in the retro direction than Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Kind of part of the unofficial 32-bit era.
Yeah, kind of. Even though it was a PC game and so was not developed with the limitations of any particular console in mind. But anyway, back to the game. It was kind of like a revelatory experience for me because it so perfectly encapsulated the sort of joy and nostalgia I had for that era of gaming, and yet was not constrained by any particular, was not hamstrung by the design mistakes of the past. So it was its own game, and yet it could still awaken that nostalgia in me. So with that in mind, the soundtrack in particular is just, if anything could be called like the perfect retro or chiptune style adventure soundtrack, I think Cave Story would be it. Like, I remember starting up the game, you have the opening cutscene, you fight your way through some enemies, and then you end up in a place called Mimiga Village. And just that Mimiga Village theme, just like, as soon as I heard it for the first time, it was just like, I was like a kid again. There's something magical about it.
It kind of brought you back to, another place in your life. Kind of.
Yeah, and it did so in such a way, because I am not really a fan of what you would call like wannabe retro stuff in general. Like, I've grown up with a lot of retro stuff, gaming in particular, and I love it. But I'm not such a huge fan of stuff that tries to ape a particular era or call back to a particular era, because it's just like, that stuff's already been done. Give me something new. But this was kind of a revelatory experience for me, because it was like, it brought me back to that place that I was nostalgic for, and yet it was its own thing.
Okay.
And so, like, the soundtrack is a perfect example of that, because it has all the particular qualities that you would need from a 16-bit adventure game soundtrack, and yet it doesn't sound like it's trying to rip off any particular. It doesn't sound like it's trying to rip off Mario or Zelda or anything like that. It's its own thing, and yet it has all the qualities that would fit perfectly in a retro game of the early to mid 90s.
It's cool that it brings back to you the feeling of that era, or it kind of hits you in a certain way, but it's not something you grow up with necessarily. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that find games like that and find experiences that could have fit in that era or give them that feeling from that era, but they obviously were released in the modern day, and I think that's pretty cool. Cave Story. Is there any specific track you have from that game, or just in general?
I would.
The soundtrack?
In general, the soundtrack is great, but I would definitely, the standout for me is definitely the Mimiga Village theme. Not because it's necessarily better than any, but just because it was the one that kind of hit me. Like when you get into the Mimiga Village and that theme start, I remember very vividly when I played it for the first time, it was just like, bam,
Whoa.
it hit me. I was just like, I was back in that place. I was like a little kid playing my SNES games all over again.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I actually have a game that I will mention later on that kind of makes me feel that way. And it's not even a game I would have played back then. But yeah, there's definitely them out there. And that's cool. Cave Story gave you that. I remember hearing people talk about that way about Hollow Knight specifically, which is a very hard Metroidvania type game. But it has a very cool hand-drawn style, painterly, and it's a wonderful experience from what I've heard. I haven't quite played it yet, but yeah.
Hollow Knight, is that in the Shovel Knight universe?
No, but Shovel Knight's also one of those.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Shovel Knight's, it came before it, but yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely its own separate thing.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember all the name. It was no, I can't remember. There was a few different of the
it had like Shovel Knight,
the darker evil characters that they made games in the Shovel Knight style, but they was starring those characters.
Oh yeah.
Instead of Shovel Knight, and I thought maybe Hollow Knight was one of them, but
Spectre Knight was
Spectre.
Yeah, Spectre Knight.
That's the
Spectre
one.
Knight.
Spectre Knight. That's the one.
Yeah. Shovel Knight's interesting because I hear that, like, I played the main campaign of it, and the music's great, but it's kind of weird because it's definitely not my era of gaming or my callback to that kind of era.
It's for the new kiddies.
It's for the kids that grew up in like you, David, like grew up in that era, and it's a immensely competent platformer. They even released an actual N64 cartridge because it wouldn't run on the original SNES, but they would run on the N64. So they actually released the game on N64 that you, I think it was a Kickstarter back year or something.
Another game did that recently, where they put it on a physical cartridge for an older system. It was Shantae, the new game.
Oh yeah, Shantae.
They put it on Game Boy.
Yeah, the original
and
Game
they
Boy,
actually made a mode where if you had the connector cables and you had 4 Game Boys, you could all play like a 4-way battle mode.
Wow, that's
and
neat.
stuff like that. It was like a pre-order Kickstarter thingy. And I was just like, I was tempted. I was like, but at that time, my Game Boy was dead, and I didn't know if it was going to come back to life or not. Which it didn't. But I don't know.
Dead Jim.
Hey, dead Jim.
Dead Tom's dead.
I wonder how that works. Like, do you have to get Nintendo's permission to make the N64 or Game Boy cartridge?
No,
I mean,
I don't know. Back in the day, Nintendo would have gone after you for doing some, though there were unofficial Nintendo games released back in the day. One of the more notable ones was Super Noah's Ark 3D.
What?
Oh, I remember hearing this game.
What?
Yes.
It was essentially a reskinned version of Doom.
Oh yes.
Or no, not Doom. Wolfenstein 3D. Sorry.
Okay, Wolfenstein.
What?
Yeah. And you're shooting,
and you're Noah going around the Ark you're calming down.
Oh my god.
Restless animals with your slingshot, and then occasionally there's like you have to read a Bible verse. It's insane.
Okay.
But
oh my god.
It was famous. It was on the SNES.
Really?
And it was famous for circumventing Nintendo's copy protection at the time because it was like what was called like a pass-through cartridge.
Oh.
So you had to plug another game into it.
Oh my god.
So that it would work.
That's amazing.
I've heard I've seen on Etsy and stuff people selling like ROM hacks of The Legend of Zelda and stuff like that. And what's the other one that I was thinking about?
There's a couple cartridges I have in my room.
Oh yeah, I was like, you have some off of eBay.
No. This was from an official like website or whatever. I found it where it was ROM hacks of the English translation of the 5th Fire Emblem game, or no, the 6th Fire Emblem game that was only in Japan on the Game Boy Advance, which was the first entry. The one we got on Game Boy Advance was just called Fire Emblem, but that one's called.
That's like the
Binding Blade. I think is the one that was in Japan. Blazing Sword, which was the sequel, is the one that we got. So I could be getting it backwards, but I have the English translation of The Binding Blade in there. And it's really cool because it's like, it was Roy's game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the character Roy, and it's in the games, and it's really cool. It's a ROM hack, so it's the English translation. You can find it online and just play it in the emulator. But I have an actual cartridge that'll run it. It's really cool. And the famous Fire Emblem game that I have in there, the most famous fan-made ROM hack of one of the Game Boy games is called The Last Promise. And it's the most famous Fire Emblem fan-made game. It's original soundtrack, characters, maps, gameplay. Well, the gameplay is from the Game Boy games, but I think it's a ROM hack of Sacred Stones or something, or the first Fire Emblem on Game Boy Advance. And it's its own characters, own story, own writing, own music, everything. And I cannot wait to dive deep into that because there's so many good campaigns out there for ROM hacks for Fire Emblem games. One I've seen, there's even a Ruby one apparently that somebody made a demo where like Yang is in there, Blake, all these Ruby characters.
I remember that. Oh my gosh.
You mentioned way back in the beginning of the episode talking about A Link to the Past online, how we were messing around with that. That you talking about ROM hacks brings me to mind is like, yeah, one of these days I want to get together and play Link to the Past online, but not the regular Link to the Past.
Ooh.
I want to play it on a ROM hack called Gerudo Exile. It's got a completely different storyline. Like, it still opens up. You're in your house, and your uncle or
Grandpa,
maybe someone is like, I have to go stay here, but like the voice you hear is like a completely different one, and it's like, it's not Zelda, it's like your sister or something, and like she's like telling you about like how like a job went wrong or something, and so it's very interesting. And it's super difficult. Gerudo Exile is super difficult compared to the original game too.
It's like the Dark Souls of Zelda.
Because like right off the bat, you go outside your house and there's already enemies out there.
Oh, whoa!
And you haven't even got your sword yet. And one of them's actually guarding the hole that you have to like pick the bush up off of.
Oh yeah, and get in the castle.
So you have to like throw bushes at this guard to kill him because you don't have your sword yet. And then as soon as you get your sword and you get into the castle, you're just like, the whole interior of Hyrule Castle has been redesigned into this massive dungeon right off the get-go. Dang. And there's like even late game enemies in there.
Oh my gosh.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, once we get through Link to the Past, that'd be cool to try the ROM hack. Yeah.
But back to Cave Story. Were there any
back
other,
to Cave Story. Was there anything else you want to say about it? Or
no, I think I'm good on that.
All right, let's move on to Lexi. Lexi, what's your number 4? Yeah, 4. Thank you.
So, I hope you guys aren't mad at me because I couldn't put Banjo-Kazooie in my top 5.
How dare you?
It's in my honorable mentions. It's the first one in my honorable mentions.
Okay, but what's your next one though?
So you're gonna.
We'll talk about later.
Yeah,
if we have time. Yeah.
But
spoiler alert. I don't know if we will.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Well, Lexi, get to your 4th one. What's your 4th one?
All right, my 4th one is
Dave's got to go to bed.
Professor Layton.
Professor Layton, the whole series.
So the whole series of
that's a cop out.
I'm
joking.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so
to the audience who doesn't know what Professor Layton is, it is a puzzle series, mystery series about a professor named Herschel Layton.
What was it on? What platform?
It was started on the DS, and then it went to the 3DS, and now the first 3 games are on like mobile and stuff like that.
Yeah, I forgot about
and they're
that.
making a new one for Switch that's supposed to come out next year. I thought it was going to come out this year, and I'm a little sad.
That's exciting.
But it's just about Layton and his apprentice, and they have at least one female companion, and depending on what game it is, and they go on adventures to solve mysteries.
Wacky
like
characters,
they're very wacky characters,
operatic villain in there.
Yeah. So and then the game also has like these really crazy plot twists, but they're believable, if that makes sense. Okay. So I'm just gonna spoil game 2, but
go for it. Yeah.
There's a it's called the Diabolical Box. The reason it's called that,
but does this have to do with the music?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does.
I was like, are we just going to go through the plots of Professor Layton games, like the deep lore of Professor Layton?
So like each game has a different.
Where we were going, Lex.
Each game has a different premise. Like you get in the first one, no one can
First
find.
one's a village. Second one's a train.
Yeah, the second one is a train, and you have this box that is said to kill whoever opens it. And there's a vampire thing thrown into it, which is really crazy. But then they explain the reality.
Oh, like Scooby-Doo.
Well, let's take the mask off this guy. It's an old guy.
It's an old guy.
Which is actually
This is every episode
Let's
of
see
Scooby-Doo.
who you really are. Bernie Sanders.
I am once again asking you kids to stop meddling in my business. So how does Diabolical Box end? Is Bernie Sanders in it?
No. So the reason
dang it.
that you find out that people are seeing things and stuff like that is because the town where the supposable vampire lives was a mining town, and when they found all these riches, all the chemicals from the mine went up into the town and started killing people and making them see things that they couldn't see, and you find out that that's what the box is made out of. And most people remember the game for the theme of the Diabolical Box because it's like a music box and stuff like that. It's a really sad one. A lot of the storylines are kind of sad for Professor Layton, but the music I think is top tier. And the games I wanted to highlight were the third game called The Unwound Future, or The Lost Future in Europe. And then Miracle Mask, which was the first one on 3D.
On 3DS. Yeah.
The 3D models did not jump well.
Oh man, yeah.
Because you're
Went
going
from
from
2D sprites to 3D models.
yeah, it's a little rough, but the music. What's funny is that when I went to the fandom of Professor Layton, people would agree that Unwound Future has the best story and really good soundtrack, but a lot of people liked Miracle Mask, and I really liked that one. That was like the one I actually played and beat for the first time, which I know is probably sacrilege, but the soundtrack really struck me because when you go into Miracle Mask, you go into the city, it's like Carnival from Italy, but you're in the middle of a desert. And the soundtrack, like the first thing you get there is there's circuses everywhere. There's parades every night. And that music, just like the game series, has a lot of accordion and piano and
Lots
the violin have a lot to do with that. And it was just really
get your polka music going. You're listening.
well. I
Professor
remember
Layton.
because when I would play it, I had to wear my headphones because I was only allowed to play it in Chelsea and Allie's room.
Oh yeah,
And
on
so
their DS,
I would stick my little headphones into the DS and I would just play it. And I just remember like completely being enthralled. And then like something happens in the beginning of the game where you jump on horses and you do this huge horse chase. And I really liked that music. But for the
yeah,
you're doing your fingers and
I'm just moving my hand.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if those were supposed to be signals of some kind.
No,
So.
this isn't the Timcast, Lexi. I'm not Tim Pool.
What? You didn't get the memo about the hand signs?
hand signs? What does this one mean? Okay. Well, I have
For those of you who aren't here with us, Jake here was throwing some pretty wicked gang
some
signs.
gang signs up, man. I was doing my ALS, my GALS. That's what I'm doing. Gangster American Sign Language going on. While I have you derailed, Lexi, I will say Professor Layton, delightful music.
It
throughout
is
the
really
whole
delightful.
series. Great soundtracks. Some of the best. And I think Unwound Future specifically, from what I remember, that whole soundtrack in that game.
It's very emotional.
Very emotional, more downtrodden because of the story and what's happening.
Yeah.
But the music really excels at making you want to keep thinking. And I feel like the first one kind of suffers from this, I feel like, just from what I've played, where it gets a little annoying and overbearing. But as you go through the series, some of the music kind of gets more contemplating. Like you're kind of fine with listening to it over and over.
Yeah.
As you go along to it. I mean, kind of like with a real-time strategy RPG, like some of those like tracks will just play over and over and over, so they better be good.
Yeah.
And I think Professor Layton kind of excels in
I
that.
think whatchamacallit, there is like each game has puzzles you got to do, and each game has a very specific puzzle theme. I think there's only one game where I did not like the puzzle theme, and it was just a sped up version of the first puzzle theme from the first game. And that was like the only thing that like I complained about with the game. But other than that, like in the third game, you're going through London and they have 2 or 3 different tracks for London because it's about time travel. So you get sent to future steampunk London and the music is slightly different, but has more of a cello. And that track specifically are called London Streets. And that one always stuck with me because when you're walking around normal London streets, suddenly you hear it starts with like an out of tune piano and then it goes to an accordion and a violin. But when you go into like future London, they just have the accordion. They don't have the piano.
Okay.
And so that kind of stood out to me. I remember spending, I totally forgot about this. I would spend hours staring at my DS, touching the little bonus songs. Like if you played enough puzzles, then you would get the bonus features and you would get like the cutscenes, you would get the songs and some character voice lines. And I just remember like sitting there and listening and just imagining like lots of things with just lots of things. Because Professor Layton was my very big obsession, along with ponies at that time and turtles.
Ponies, turtles, Professor Layton, and then Undertale comes out and
the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, we haven't even. Yeah. Is anything else you want to say about Professor Layton?
I would like to bring up the last official game, because they did 6 official games, and the last game that they did,
Is Professor Layton in Phoenix, right? Part of that official list.
So that came out a few months after the last game came out, because it was in production for like 6 or 7 years,
and it was Japan only. I remember, right?
So it started out. We thought it was going to be Japan only. And then they released it.
Oh,
yeah, they did
right.
translate it into English.
Yeah. So what's going on with the
So I think with the last one, I have a lot of problems with the story of the last one, but we're not going to go there.
No.
But there's a part where you're traveling around the world. You go to like a section of the Bahamas to solve this mystery and look for these ancient artifacts. That's what this whole thing is. You're looking through ancient artifacts. That's why you're going around the world. You go to like Greenland. You go back to London. And what they did that blew me away was they have the London streets theme from the 3rd Professor Layton game, but it's a live orchestra, I found out. And what they did was when the 3rd game came out, they did some live performances at some convention or something like that. And one of the tracks they did was the London streets. And the way it starts like the accordion version would, but it's like a bell. And then suddenly it starts like with the violin, and then the rest of the orchestra chimes in. And to just hear all of that come together, and it gets louder and louder. I was in the middle of playing the game, and you get to London and all this jazz, and then I stopped and I was just like, I had my headphones on and I was just like, this is my favorite track of the entire series. And they just did perfection. They did it justice. And then I want to briefly bring up Phoenix Wright versus Professor Layton, which is a crossover game.
No.
So they have the Professor Layton music, but then they have the Phoenix Wright, like the objection and the turnabout music, but they orchestrated it.
Oh,
and
that's cool.
Half of the game takes place in a storybook. They get sucked into a storybook.
What?
So you didn't know this?
No.
So it starts out in the real world. So it starts out in the real world, and then they get sucked into a fairy tale.
Level 5. What are you guys doing over there?
And Capcom.
Yeah.
But they get sucked into a fantasy book. Both Phoenix and then what's her name, Maya, and then the Professor and Luke, and they both in different times get sucked into this book in like the same night. And they end up in this fantasy world where there are witches and there are witch trials. And Phoenix, this is the hilarious part about it. So Phoenix Wright disappears after, and like you just go straight to the Professor and Luke for the next part of the game. And you don't know where Phoenix and his assistant are. And then you get to this bakery and suddenly Phoenix Wright is there and they put an apron on him. And he's like, how dare you disregard my, he goes, our loaves of bread, they are delicious. And then later when you have to do the trial, he goes, what am I doing here? And then suddenly it all comes back to him as the tutorial is going on, which is, I found out is this is a thing that they do with each game. So they keep the consistency of like, if you don't know how to play this game and this is your first Professor Layton Phoenix Wright game, he gets bonked on the head and he has to learn all the trial stuff over again at the very beginning of the game and stuff like that. So, but like to hear that music that was orchestrated, like, cause like compared to like the DS and the Game Boy Phoenix Wright versions where they're like chiptune, pixelated kind of a thing, to hear it orchestrated along the same lines as the Professor Layton games is really cool. And cool. I've never beaten the game. I still need to beat it. But that's one thing I look forward to either playing a Professor Layton game or replaying it is the soundtrack. Anyway, I've gone too long on that.
Yeah, well, all I'll say is it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the Switch entry, which will be next year.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. And I will note that there are some side games, and there was one that was trying to be a continuation of the Professor Layton games. And that soundtrack was good, but the thing though is that they were making the game the same time they were making a series based on the games, and the series, the anime does a better job keeping the continuity of the Professor Layton games, and so that soundtrack for the anime is very good too. So yeah,
it's a lot to say about Professor Layton. All right, so for mine, I'm gonna go to my number 4, which I would consider it a masterpiece. What I'm about to go over, and it's been said before, many things have been said about this game, but I was one of those in 2017, 16 when it came out, and it was on PC only. Why are you humming? Stop humming. I have to edit this. And David too. So anyway, it's appropriate that you're humming though, because many of these tunes are hummable, which is the tunes of Stardew Valley.
I should have seen this coming.
This game is so special to me, and I remember when it came out, and I was going to classes. I was going to college, and this is, Skyrim was probably the only game in my life at that point where I was like probably staying up way later than I should, going through the mod list on PC, playing it consistently, and I would stay up till like 3 a.m. doing that. There's no other game until Stardew Valley came out that was that for me. Like I had to get up at like 6 a.m. the next morning to get ready for class to drive, an hour and a half to Butte College. And I would stay up purposefully till 3 a.m. playing Stardew Valley because I was so sucked into it. And so like, just one more day, I got to play this. And during those late night sessions and early evening sessions, the music would just calm your ADD brain so much and just really bring a kind of nice warm blanket around you.
It was a nice cozy blanket.
Nice cozy blanket. This game is so cozy, and it's so stated how good this game is, but I want to highlight the music specifically because the guy who made it, Eric Baroni is his name. He lives in Washington.
Eric Baroni?
Eric Baroni.
It's Eric Maloney?
What do you got against Italian names, David?
Dave Maloney?
Dave Maloney. Eric Baroni is his name. He made all the music by himself. This is why Stardew Valley took like 5 years of his life to make, or 7 or something crazy like that.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So one guy made this game, and he made all the music too. And it's just such a cool success story in my mind for him. But one of the tracks specifically I want to highlight is probably the best set track in the game. And it's one of the winter themes. It's winter and the wind can be still. Remember when I first was playing this and I got to winter, it's basically the game, for those who aren't aware, it's basically like Harvest Moon. You have your farm that your grandpa gifted to you, and he's dead now, and you got to take it over. You got to run the farm. You got to make a profit, that kind of thing. It's kind of one of those cozy kind of games, farming games. And you can make relationships with the villagers and maybe eventually marry one of them, that kind of thing. And then you have like a bunch of different aspects as well, but that's basically the idea. When the winter theme hits on winter day 1, and I get out of my house in the game, and I'm, doing my crop. There's no crops. I'm going into the barn. I'm getting my animals, making sure they're good, feeding them hay, blah, blah, blah. I then do my usual rounds, and I'm going to go gift as many gifts as I can for the week for to the villagers, because I want to be friends with everybody. That's what was my goal. I wanted to be friends with everybody and make as much money possible. The ultimate, capitalist / socialist together, I guess. I don't know.
Wow.
But anyway, I go I walk along the path. Imagine it's like 2:30 in the morning. I'm walking along the path and I'm playing this game. And then like my speakers are playing this music. And then I enter the village and then you hear dun, 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 dun. Like it brushes over you and it kind of soaks you in. This track does. It's called Winter, the Wind Can Be Still, starts playing. And I'm like, whoa. Also, it's late. I have to go to bed. I'm stressed out for everything in my life at that point, over school, life, girls, whatever. But when that hit, I kind of took a second. I was like, wow, this is like I never heard anything like that in my life in that track. And it was just really euphoric and just very beautiful. And I just want to highlight that track specifically and kind of paint you guys that picture.
Yeah.
But also in the mines during the winter, there's a track called Mines: Cloth. And it's another one where it's just like the winter theme in terms of it makes you feel like you are alone in this world, but you're also not alone. I don't necessarily know how to explain it, but those two tracks have been on like my, like I said before, my sleepy mix at night, where I'll just play it and go to sleep to this music. And the winter theme and the mines theme, the cloth one, is just so peaceful. And I kind of carried those songs with me since I've heard them, and it's always like a comfort to go back to.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah, go for it.
I remember when it was before you moved out and we had bedrooms across from each other. I remember in the middle of the night, I'd get up to get a drink of water or something, and I would hear the Stardew Valley soundtrack coming from your room. And at first, I thought you had it on your subwoofers, but it was just like your phone and your speakers.
Oh yeah,
and
I was going to sleep. Yeah,
I was just like at first, like because it would fade in, it would fade out, and I would go and get some, and then I'd hear the dun, dun, and I was like, shoot, because
some of those tracks start abruptly on that side of the playlist.
But I think it's funny. Like I think it's crazy and funny and interesting how music can kind of just touch us like that. There's a song that doesn't have anything to do with video games, but it's called Musical Revival by Forever Jones, which was a family that was an entire band. And one of their songs, Musical Revival, I really like it because every part of the song goes through a different part of music. Like the first part says, "My name is Rhythm, and I think it says I like to jive. Sometimes I make you laugh, sometimes I make you cry." And then I think it's the bridge where it's like everything's going on in the song, and then the girl says, "Now I can start a riot and an uprising. I can start a fire in you or put it out just the same." And then what my favorite line is, "I can speak your language to you perfectly." And it's just kind of talking about how music moves us and stuff like that. And I think that really is it when we play certain video games or when we listen to certain songs either on the radio or online. It's just there's always like that one song that just kind of touches you. Like that's kind of like it stops everything. In my case, it'll stop everything and I'll be like, whoa, like that, like it makes you either think or it'll just like kind of stop your like all the busyness of the world. Yeah,
and with the winter thing specifically, it kind of whenever I hear it or it plays or it's on shuffle on my Spotify and then I hear it randomly, I kind of just take a moment and like it's like da 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 da, and when I hear it, I'm like, and I kind of stop and then I kind of take a breath and I'm like, oh, okay, and then it just keeps going and I'm like, man, it's just I don't know.
Music has a really great way of affecting people and stuff like that.
And that's kind of something I want to talk about like on another podcast later on is intentionality with things you create and what the goal of what your creation is, especially with music. I would love to know what Eric Baroni's goal was creating the soundtrack and specifically these soundtracks. And if I ever get the chance to talk to him, that's something that I would love to ask him. So David, let's hop to your fifth one. But before we do, is there any examples that you have that we were just talking about, like songs that kind of just hit you?
Let's see.
And not even video game specific, but anything.
I mean, there's too many to list. I think I would. I think I would go back to back to the Mimiga theme and cave story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember as soon as that particular track, it just kind of hit me in such a way, and I just kind of had to stop, and then it was just like suddenly I was transported back to an earlier time, a bygone era.
It's kind of like it's kind of like spiritual, kind of just
Yeah,
when it affects you like that.
well, it plays on like it's definitely emotional, I think for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, maybe there's something deeper to it, like your brain specifically.
I mean, our brains are definitely wired to understand music. What's interesting is there's all sorts of, so if you dive into the rabbit hole that is music theory,
Mm-hmm.
there's all sorts of rules and information and things you can learn. But the interesting thing about music theory is rules you learn in music theory are not prescriptive, they're descriptive. So essentially, the goal of music theory is to put names and systems to the things about music that our brains are already processing. So that's the thing about our brains is when we hear music, our brains are dissecting it. Our brains are looking at each individual element and analyzing it, but it's doing so subconsciously. We're not. So what all we get is the end result, the feeling that you get from listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
But in the background, your brain is actually analyzing the music. And so music theory, broadly speaking, isn't a prescriptive system of how you're supposed to do music. It's a descriptive system to try and put names and rules to the things that our brain does naturally when listening to music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's so much to be said about, I mean, everybody has that certain track that hits them, of course, but also think of it how your brain reacts. I mean, you see people who maybe are kids or something and they have maybe a form of autism and they're nonverbal or something like that. But music, in many examples, has been shown to really hit them and touch their brain in a way that they can understand it or that they feel something.
Yeah.
And it's something that, like specifically having like a form of autism and ADD as well. It's music's always been important to me, but there's something about, I don't know. There's something about music in the sense of somebody went out of their way and they thought of this
Mm-hmm.
and they figured out how to translate it onto a keyboard or a guitar or something. And they were able to transfer that emotion they were feeling or whatever the intent was behind it.
Yeah.
And it's cool that that's translatable between humans and with our brains in general, which
I-
we're getting a little deep here, but
Yeah. A little thing I want to add on that is I remember hearing a news story back when the iPods were still superior.
Whoa.
And it had moved on.
Still superior. Oh yeah, because iPhone's now a thing.
Yeah. But I remember hearing a news story on one of the news stations that where people would donate their old iPod touches and their shuffles, and they would give it to old folks' homes, specifically people who had dementia or Alzheimer's. And they would put older music on there from the era of those people. And when they would listen to it, they would a lot of the older folks would remember the songs and they would remember the words. And it would make them very happy and just strike something up in them. And it was one of the most emotional things I ever saw.
And there's also like that video you can find online, and there's multiple probably examples of this, but the one that comes to me is the one of the daughter, the daughter who's going to get married, and her dad has dementia, and he doesn't remember who she is. She's in a wedding dress and everything. So they sit on the couch together in this video, and he was a very prominent painter, and he was really good at it. And so what they did is to get his brain like to remember things, they gave him a canvas and some paintbrushes and everything and just let him go. And so he would start painting, and then like probably after 5 minutes or something, he would kind of look up and be like, oh, hey, what's going on over here? And he's like, oh my God, it's my daughter. And he would remember. And then she would say, hey, Dad, I'm getting married today. He's like, oh my God, you're getting married. Like he would then remember. It's weird how the brain dissects and especially when it has a disease like that, it can go back and it can remember things and pull things into memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fascinating.
And art can really trigger things in people.
And that's why art's important.
Yeah.
Is because not only to evoke emotion, but to inspire as well. Because you don't know who you're going to be inspiring when you make it.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Eric Baroni, for making Stardew Valley. So, David, I'm going to hand it over to you. What's your fifth and final game?
All right, so
Yes,
my
tell
fifth
us.
and final game is kind of a newer addition to this list.
Ooh.
So, it's going to be The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh, really?
So why I put this on this list? So, I mean, all three of us, I'm sure took different approaches to picking our lists. But for me, my thought process when compiling this list was what music made an impact on me in a specific way, a specific kind of way. So that's why a lot of it was SNES titles, because that was like, I grew up on the SNES. But this one was on the list specifically because of the way the soundtrack drew me into the world of the game. So
I have a question really quick. Did you play Breath of the Wild before you played Tears of the Kingdom?
I played a little bit of Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I didn't finish it or anything, or even get anywhere near doing any significant part of it.
It's a long haul game.
I mean, I get bored of games easily. So that's why I like open world games where there's a lot to do, because I can just kind of mess around for a little bit and not get bored of the main quest or whatever.
Yeah.
But so that's why Tears of the Kingdom was so good to me, is because it took what the basic premise, the basic structure of Breath of the Wild, and kind of populated the world more fully. So there was more things to do, more things to occupy me when I inevitably got bored of the main quest.
Yeah.
So yeah, but whoa.
Oh, you're good. I got it.
Lots of acrobatics there, and whoa.
Oh my God. Ah!
You're gonna, yeah, okay.
Anyway, you were saying about
Anyway.
acrobatics.
Don't mind me.
So yeah, so specifically with Tears of the Kingdom, the soundtrack drew me into the world of the game, because it's an open world game. You can go wherever you want, you can do whatever you want. And in those types of games, immersion is very important. And so Tears of the Kingdom stands out to me because its soundtrack, more so than any other game in recent memory that I can think of, for me specifically, drew me into the world of the game, immersed me in the world of the game, in such a way that it drove me to keep playing it. And so I would like, it's kind of a recent addition for me, because before,
It's pretty recent.
yeah, well, yeah, it's a recent game, because before, what I would have picked for this sort of, for a game soundtrack that had this kind of effect on me, would have been The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
Okay, I was wondering if that was going to get brought up.
But I ultimately decided to go with Tears of the Kingdom, just because I think it does the same thing as what the Skyrim soundtrack did, but to me, it does it so much better, because it brings in all these elements from Zelda games of the past. It's almost like a great, like, best of in terms of Zelda soundtracks. And so it brings in all this stuff that was really nostalgic to me and puts a new spin on it.
Yeah.
Whereas, sure, yes, the Dovahkiin theme of Skyrim is pretty epic, but it doesn't have the same nostalgia power as Zelda does for me specifically.
Yeah.
So that's why Tears of the Kingdom kind of takes the cake for me. Like, one great example of the nostalgia factor for me was the the Wind Temple boss. I believe his name was Colgera.
Isn't that with the Ritos above Rito Village and everything's like cold?
Yep. And the theme for the Colgera battle was one of the better tracks on Wind Waker.
Dragon Roost Island, right?
Yes, Dragon Roost Island.
I've heard that. I haven't gotten to that boss yet. I'm taking my pee picking time with Tears of the Kingdom, but I've heard people compare it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that is Dragon Roost Island. I never played Wind Waker, but that song was in Smash Bros, and so I always loved that track. So that is one of my favorite Zelda tracks.
But yeah, it takes the Dragon Roost Island theme from Wind Waker and recontextualizes it. Takes that flute melody and turns it into an epic string melody.
Yeah.
And it almost gives it like a very dramatic quality. Like
it's like epic.
Like it's epic, but it's like epic in a specific way. Like the only way I can describe it is like it's almost like traditional Chinese music.
Yeah.
In a way where it's very dramatic, it's very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was pretty crazy what they were able to do is take that melody, which was contextually very different, and then turn it into the Colgera theme.
Yeah.
Like that was one that was like when I, because I actually watched someone else play it before I played it myself.
Before you stepped into the world of Hyrule.
But so I heard the theme on YouTube before I actually played it. But when I watched somebody else play that part of the game and I heard that theme, it was like, oh my God, it hit me. I was like, man, I really want to play this game now.
Yeah.
It's interesting because with Breath of the Wild, because I'm also in Tears of the Kingdom as well, but I'm kind of like on the first dungeon or the first boss. I'm at the water place or whatever. But yeah, the music is something else. I don't know.
I mean, I thought the original soundtrack for Breath of the Wild had a great soundtrack.
Yeah, and that's what I'm more familiar with, honestly, because like and even playing it on an emulator recently just to see what it looks like, it's like you get that music, you get the piano, you get the subtlety of it, and it hits. Like most of the time, it's kind of quiet in the game, and then when it does hit, it's more. It hits better. It's more. There's more resonance because you go for there's a lack of it for so long.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember you showing me, David, the track you're talking about with the wind boss, and I was like, "Whoa, that really is Dragon Roost Island." And I'd love to find out like what more like homages are in this one, because I remember in Twilight Princess, there's so many homages.
Oh my gosh.
That time,
yeah,
to stuff like to the SNES era, or of course Ocarina of Time.
Majora's Mask.
Majora's Mask. You get the new Breath of the Wild and Tears. And you get the new generation at Nintendo being brought up by the older guys, and they're saying this is how you make games, and this is how you make a soundtrack. And it's cool to see because the lady who did the Breath of the Wild soundtrack, I remember reading this, she had a goal of, because they were all inspired by Skyrim. Skyrim was a very heavy inspiration for Breath of the Wild.
This is like baby's first Skyrim.
Yeah, baby's first Skyrim. But you're correct, David, because it does the same, it achieves the same goal. It's appropriate that it's called Breath of the Wild because in Skyrim, just like in Skyrim, it feels like it's alive. The world is open. The world is there. Yeah, you have quests. Yeah, you have characters. Yeah, you have stuff to do.
No limits.
But the world is its own character.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what successful open world games do. You have stuff like Far Cry, which kind of has a character to it in its world, but it's mostly just a playground.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In this, it achieves both.
Mm-hmm.
You have Breath of the Wild and Tears, especially in Tears. There's so much you can do in that game, and the tech stuff. And
it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
That's one reason I haven't touched it.
Coming from Breath of the Wild to that, you're like, oh my God. And they changed everything about the land.
Yeah, that was
the same world.
Yeah, that was one of the things that kept me playing Tears of the Kingdom. I got bored of Breath of the Wild. Not that it's not a great game.
No, I did.
But I get,
yeah.
I'm at a stage in my life where I don't game nearly as much as I used to, and I get bored of games really easily.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing that kept me playing Tears, was there's literally so much stuff to do.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I get bored of it, I can wander around for a couple minutes and find something that'll pique my interest again.
Yeah. And it's super it's cool because with Tears of the King, it's such an interesting example too. Like they literally added more of the world too. Like you have the above ground, you have the ground, and you have the underground.
And it all runs on Switch without catching fire.
Amazingly so. I mean, like we were talking about in our analysis of the games industry, the Switch hardware is like from 2013, 14.
Oh yeah.
It's old. And it's like, it's amazing that it can run on this kind of stuff. It's weaker than a PS4 and Xbox One, and it runs on it.
Tears of the Kingdom is probably like the Banjo-Kazooie of the Switch.
And then the Tears is Banjo-Tooie. It's the open world, more open version of Banjo-Kazooie.
It really...
You go up in the sky.
You go up in the sky in Tooie?
There's probably... Well, I mean, in the way that there's probably not much more... performance-wise that the Switch is actually capable of pulling off.
Yeah, and like it's just it blows your mind that they can make it.
I mean, have you seen Security Breach run on the Switch?
Oh,
it's
God.
nasty.
Yeah.
But I did want to kind of cap off my Breath of the Wild thing by I want to ask you guys like specifically, like sure there's great soundtracks, but specifically what were some game soundtracks that was like the track actually drew you into the world of the game specifically?
So, oh gosh, I have so many because like my experience. So like when I first found No Straight Roads, I was like, oh, what's this colorful game? And there was a part where I was just watching the boss fight because it was a boss fight compilation. And I thought, whoa. And there's one point where I was just listening to the music and I wasn't focusing on what was going on. And it kind of drew me in with every boss fight I was skipping to. And then right after that, I kind of abandoned the video. I didn't get to the end. And I went and I listened to almost every single track of No Straight Roads just laying in my bed. And I was like, what is this game? And by the time I hit the last, like the one I was talking about, where it was like the EDM version, then there's like the rock version has like a choir and stuff like that. I was just like, I have to play this game. And my next game that I'm gonna mention kind of did that, but I don't really want to say it right now because I don't want to draw away from.
We'll get into that. Yeah. In fact, my next game does actually get into that, Dave, where I heard the soundtrack and then I wanted to find the game. And that's your question, right? Like you heard the sound and you're like, I need to play that game because.
Well, yeah, that also, but like also, it draws you into the world.
I would say, absolutely, Stardew Valley is an example for that for me.
Yeah.
But I would also say God of War 2018. When I first played that, and the soundtrack is like
Dad of War.
Dad of War, yeah.
Boy!
Like don't be sorry.
Do you know why? Oh my gosh, do you know why he just called him boy for like most of the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because
you tell him.
So the reason they did
tell
that,
the audience,
the dear audience, the reason that he just calls him boy, is because they didn't have a name for him when they were doing all the motion capture until they got like to the end of the game.
Yeah,
and so
literally, like
they just ran with it.
Yeah, they didn't call him Atreus until like halfway through development. Like,
yeah,
it was hilarious.
Yeah.
But I would say God of War is definitely one. Another one, these are also my honorable mentions, but God of War 2018, but also Donkey Kong Country, the first and the sequels, Tropical Freeze.
And Return? Donkey Kong Country
No,
Returns?
Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze specifically, I would say.
Okay.
Is one where David Wise comes in and he just really envelops you in the old music and kind of like with the Killer Instinct reboot, reimagines a lot of the stuff that he created. Like David Wise created Donkey Kong Country music back in the day.
Yeah.
And he comes back along with like some Koji Kondo and some other people as well, and he kind of reimagines it, and it really draws you into those levels, and it's just beautiful. So
yeah.
So those are my examples I'd give. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about Breath of the Wild, or sorry, Tears of the Kingdom specifically? Or
no, that was sort of the capper for that.
Yeah, it's good.
That's cool.
And all right, Lexi, let's get to your number 5.
So I had a lot of problems. So just because I have music in my honorable mentions does not mean I do not think it is a lesser soundtrack. I love a lot of video games, basically the same.
They're all on the same level to me.
You can't cap me off.
Equality for video game liking. Yeah.
So my number 5 is Undertale.
I knew it.
Did you?
I'm surprised.
So
wow.
the first time I ever heard it, because I wasn't on the internet as much back then. I was still very cautious about what I did online and stuff and where I went.
Yeah.
And I specifically remember getting in Adelaide's car. I think it was when she had her Saturn.
My gosh, I remember that.
I don't remember
the red
if it was her
Auburn
Saturn or if it was her Kia. But
Yeah.
she had a she goes, guys, let's listen to Undertale. And she had a burned CD of Undertale covers that were all metal covers and rock covers. And she sticks it in, and the first track is
This
mostly
is where all the bronies went, by the way, David. They went from doing brony music to Undertale music.
no, that's not true. They all went from My Little Pony to Five Nights at Freddy's, and then Undertale.
Five Nights at Freddy's, and then a year later they did Undertale.
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
Yeah, so
Got to culture you in the internet history, you know.
don't even get me started on Hamilton.
I feel like I'm quite cultured enough when it comes to the internet. So
Okay, so
I've seen things you wouldn't believe.
I've been to the depths of DeviantArt. I know what you don't know what I want.
Oh, that was a Blade Runner reference.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Jeez, Jake, you should have picked that up.
Wash away. Oh man.
Anyway.
So Lexi, Undertale. What's
So the first boss fight, not technically, but one of the first boss fights in the game is called Heartache, where you're fighting against the Lady Toriel, and she wants to protect you in the game because there are monsters ahead that will all try and attack you. To the audience, and when I heard the metal cover of this and with the drums and the guitar, it was one of the most flooring things. I was just sitting in the back of a car staring out a window. I don't even remember where we were going. It might have been Free Comic Book Day. It might have been to Barnes & Noble. I don't know. But it's like a 20-minute...
You're 17, I think, at this point, right?
No, Undertale came out. I was 16.
Oh, you're 16. Okay, that's right.
16, 17. And I remember hearing the music, and I was so blown away by hearing that. And then at the end of it, they added a track called Falling Down. And it's I don't know if you've heard it, but it's da 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 da. It's really quiet.
Okay, yeah, I kind of.
So they added that because that's the last thing that you see of Toriel is
she's dead.
Well, it depends on what
path you go, but yeah.
Is that when that happens, when I heard that, I was just like, what is this? And then I don't remember, there's a bunch of tracks, the boss fights.
Papyrus is
Toby Fox. Dude. I don't know what goes through his head, but almost every game I've seen him work on with the soundtrack is amazing. He did a bunch of tracks for Sword and Shield, Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Oh yeah.
He did the gym theme.
I forgot about that.
Where you hear the chanting in the background because you're supposed to be in a football stadium. And then he did another track, which is funny because he did a track called The Battle Tower, and I showed it to Adelaide, and she wasn't paying attention. I'm like, Adelaide, what do you think of this Toby Fox song? She goes, oh, this is that one track from Undertale, right? I'm like, this ain't from Undertale, sweetheart.
This is from Pokemon.
Pokemon fool. But yeah, so Papyrus's theme, Bone Trazzle. Dun, dun, dun,
man.
dun, dun. That is my 5 o'clock alarm when I have to go.
God. That sounds like the worst thing to wake up to.
So sometimes I feed a neighbor's horse, their horses, and that's my alarm. A few weeks ago, I traded phones with my dad, and I forgot I had that alarm set.
Oh no!
He's walking out of the grocery store and suddenly hears. Da, 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 da,
okay. I thought you meant 5
da,
in the morning. I'm like, oh wow.
Oh no, 5 in the afternoon.
Okay.
But I was just
dad's in the bed, and then da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Yes, human. It's like, oh my god. My dad's like, what in the Lord's is that the trumpet sounds? What's happening? The rapture! The rapture's here! Bone Trazzle! It's a trumpet!
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Bone Trazzle.
But Spider Dance. Spider Dance is a good one.
Oh yeah, the spider lady.
The night lady.
The spider dance. That famous,
that was my favorite.
It's a spider dance.
Exactly, David. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly how
I
it
do
goes.
not pity you, David.
But yeah, the soundtrack's very bit tune, very 8-bit. Really, it's not really a kind of a 16-bit callback.
Battle Against a True Hero, and then no. It's called I'm trying to remember because there's the good one and the bad one. So there's Battle Against a True Hero, which I think is the genocide route, and then there's the other one. I can't remember, but there are 2 ones for the fish lady who's in armor.
Oh yeah.
With the ponytail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so both of those are really good. And then like just the music when you're running before you get to the spider dance. That one's really good. It's called Hotlands.
What's the one with the snow town or whatever?
Oh, that's Snowden.
Snowden. Yeah, that one always stood out to me.
Yeah, that was a really nice chill one. What was the track that?
And what's the flowy one?
There's
the fight when you fight him.
Your best nightmare or your worst nightmare.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then there's the finale, which a lot of people, it's like a mixture of a bunch of the songs. When you get to the Asgore, the King of the Underground, that one, it has traces of heartache, and that really stuck out to me. I did watch someone talk about that one recently who had never played the game. They were just a musician reacting to it. And he said, I don't know what it is about this game, but this track specifically sounds very somber. Like the guy who's fighting doesn't want to fight, which is basically it. What's the track that? Oh yeah, of course. Da 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 da.
Megalomania.
Yep. That was my alarm for a while.
That's an alarm.
But that kind of sent that kind of stressed me out.
PTSD vibes, you know.
I didn't even play that route in Undertale, but I know that's been memed to high heaven.
Yeah.
But it is still one of the best like boss soundtracks for like a boss fight. Like I think
it's transcended memory and history. Even
yeah.
Megalovania is
I mean,
even if you've never played a video game in your life, you've probably heard Megalovania.
Oh yeah,
it's been played at some point.
Yeah. I was also I'm not going to talk about Deltarune because I didn't play Deltarune. I've only heard some of the music. Some of the music is really good.
Yeah. They're taking their sweet old time making those games.
Yeah. But what's the track that really struck me? So Hopes and Dreams is one of the original tracks from Undertale, and in the first Deltarune, they called it A Field of Hope and Dreams. And it's like fast. It feels like an adventuring one. Like you're actually like going on an adventure and stuff. But they like sped it up a little bit. Deltarune does have some good tracks, like My Castle Town. There's one called Now's Your Chance To, and then it stops, and that's the title. And in the song, you'll hear, now's your chance to be a big shot, be a big. And then when you actually find the track,
this is an Undertale?
This is in Deltarune.
Oh, Deltarune, okay.
And then if you do the bad version and you come across the bad guy, then it plays a sped up version and a more remixed orchestrated version of that called Big Shot. And in the music, it goes, now's your chance to be a big shot. And then it goes, now's a chance to be a big shot. And actually, it actually does have someone saying, now's your chance to be a big shot. And I was like, that kind of stuck out to me.
Being part of the Undertale fan base like you are, what's been the biggest standout for you in just the music in general? Because you have fan-made music, obviously, which we probably won't go into, but
you don't want to get into the alternate universes that there are, but I will mention a few.
I just wanted to ask, like, what's been the biggest standout to you for Undertale? Just being a fan of it, because I have no knowledge of this game in intimate knowledge, I would say, because I just watched you guys play it. I never played it before, but everybody says you gotta play Undertale.
You watched me cry at the end of it. Yeah. That was rough. That's why I haven't played the game in like a long time.
But what makes you cry? What is it? What's so good about it?
Well, it was just when you do your first playthrough of the game, you find out a little bit about the king and about the lady at the beginning of the game and a little bit about the flower. And you have these monsters kind of telling you as you're going through this one part, they'll stop you like you're going to fight them in the battle. And they're talking to you and they're telling you the story about how a monster was killed by humans. And it's very sad. It's very tragic. And then when you do the true ending, all of that kind of comes together. You find out.
Are you going to spoil it?
No, you find out a lot of things, okay. And then then it starts playing a track called His Theme, and it is one of the most emotional tracks I think I've ever heard. To the point where I was online somewhere, I think it was on TikTok, and someone played a song called A Glimpse of Us. And it's like this lo-fi, hipster kind of sounding song. And then at the end, it plays the song. And then as soon as it goes to end, suddenly you hear the dun, 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 which is the track from Undertale. And they put it, someone took it and made a little edit where they put it at the end. And I just went, and I was feeling all those ending feels again.
Kind of hit you.
Yeah. But, Yeah, I think Toby Fox does a really great job. There's one game he did called Small Town Hero, and that game was not very good. It was a Game Freak one. You don't want to really know about it. But there were a few tracks because I dared to listen to the soundtrack. And most of it's repetitive, but you can tell the little bits of where Toby Fox worked on it and stuff. So, but yeah,
Toby.
the Pokemon things he do, the songs he does for Pokemon are top tier.
And hopefully he and the whole team continue on Deltarune and actually get it out, because Undertale was what, 2015 it came out?
It was 2015, 2016.
Yeah, 2015, and then it's nearly 10 years old. Wow, next year.
Yeah.
Undertale's nearly 10 years old. Wow. So,
I am feeling old.
yeah.
How do you think I feel?
I think you feel, no, I don't know how you feel.
Jakey, how about we go on to your last song?
Yes, thank you.
We don't want to embarrass David
Just
anymore.
so you know, David, the only reason I know so much about this stuff is because they would play it on my computer in my room.
Yeah.
And that's how they navigated through a lot of those kind of games, which specifically Undertale was one of those. So
Hat in Time was
I had
one of
to
them.
be in there, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll fold my clothes and be productive while they're in here. Okay. Instead of playing on my computer, you know? So anyway.
On one of his computers. I think you had two at that time.
Well, the other one, it was a Windows XP desktop. I couldn't do anything. I played Fire Emblem through an emulator on there. That's all I could do. So anyway, let me get to my fifth and final game.
Tell us.
And then, so here we go. So this is a game that I have not played, again, deeply, but I feel extremely strong about it. And like you were saying earlier, David, it's one of those games that you hear the music and you're like, where is this from? I need to play this. And that game is called Octopath Traveler.
Oh, yeah.
If you've heard of this game, it's basically, it's a Square Enix game. It's part of their,
It's a JRPG.
It's a JRPG. And this is definitely a genre I'm not into at all. Like, I've never really gotten to any of the Final Fantasies, the Chrono Trigger, or any of the Secret of Mana games or anything like that. And that's more action, but I get it. But it's still kind of a JRPG. But anyway, JRPGs are not my thing. And I remember hearing a couple tracks from this, and they would pop up and recommend it, kind of like on YouTube or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing it, and it was 2018 it came out, because Switch came out 2017, 2018 the game came out, and I heard the soundtrack. And I was kind of at a loss for words. And I'm like, all right, let me look this up. And so I went on Spotify, and I found the soundtrack, and I listened to the whole thing. And there's 70 tracks, however many. And I consider this a masterpiece. I
would agree.
It's truly indescribable. You have to go and listen to it. Every track, if you just start from the beginning theme to all the, because there's 8 characters you can play as in the game and grow your party. So there's eight, and you can choose whichever one you go with first. So you can pick the apothecary guy. You can pick the dancer. You can pick the warrior, for example, or the scholar. And each one has their own specific theme, and each area has its own theme as well. So you start with one, you go through their story, go to the next one, find them, go through their story, and then you go through the game and follow where their story goes. And it's in the style of called HD 2D. So it's all pixelated in some stuff, but the environments are 3D, and the cutscenes and the characters are 2D, but in pixel form, But it has some god rays, advanced lighting, stuff more modern day graphics.
It kind of looks like Unreal Engine a little bit.
It looks like Unreal Engine. I think it is an Unreal game, but it's breathtakingly beautiful in its own way, and it's got a very unique soundtrack from, I can't remember the guy's name. I'm gonna look that up now, but it's just beautiful. It's every track is good, every single one, and the battle theme, which is, I think we played at the LAN party.
Yeah, I remember you were talking about it, and I found the album of just the battle themes on YouTube, and I have to say just listening to the battle themes are pretty good.
Yeah, and the composer is Yasunori Nishiki. And
would you call my mama?
He's born in 85, and he's kind of been around the industry for a little bit. But yeah, Octopath Traveler. Oh, he also did the Final Fantasy 7 remakes that came out.
Huh.
That's cool. So this guy's a talent. I would put him up next to Koji Kondo. He is that talented. And Octopath Traveler, each track you hear, every one you go through, especially even the battle theme, like the battle theme does everything right. It does a battle theme great. It's catchy and it's totally re-listen toable, if that's a word. Totally replayable as you go through the game. And the one track, I just want to highlight one track because they're all really great. But the one that hits me, kind of like how the Stardew Valley Mines and Winter theme hits me, this track's called the Clifflands. And you have like the Sunlands, the Ocean Lands, but you also have the Clifflands. And each one of these have a theme. And the Clifflands theme is what really hit me with the game. It made me want to find it and play it. And the Clifflands is the most beautiful song I think I've ever heard, like an instrumental song. It's like an ease. It's like a warm blanket to your ears, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it.
That's a beautiful, colorful description.
It's a breath of fresh wind. It's a warm blanket on your skin. It's just so delightful and pleasant. And it just makes you warm and fuzzy and just makes you feel I don't know how to appreciate it. I don't know. Like, it's just a really amazing track. And Octopath Traveler is something that I really, really want to dive into deeply. I put about 5 to 6 hours into the game. And I think it's really good. I really like it, but it's definitely not my kind of thing. But it's something that's very approachable. Kind of like Baldur's Gate 3 was with CRPGs. Octopath Traveler is that way with JRPGs. It's very approachable, very beautiful. The characters are also pretty interesting in the story. There are people who would critique it saying like not all of them have a payoff, but the journey of the whole game is really, really worth the shot, I would say.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack is probably, I mean, I put it above everything. I put it above Cuphead, even God of War, all the Fire Emblem games. Like, it's that good. And like, I would like objectively, I guess I would say. So anyway, that's my number 5. And any other final thoughts, y'all, about video game music?
Let's see. I was gonna say something, and now I completely forgot. Go ahead.
So I was going to put Cuphead on my top tier of favorite video games, but I can't really because I'm biased a little. I'm a little biased because Jazz is one of
You're
my.
gonna say I know the guys that made it.
No. Oh my gosh. So Jazz is one of my favorite, and swing are some of my favorite genres of music. Like one of my top, and I just like listening to the Cuphead soundtrack. I can listen to it for hours. Like it's really good, and like the Delicious Last Course. Like I can listen to that too. But also like the game is very like it very much plays into my nostalgia for like the Mickey Mouse cartoons we used to watch.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
Popeye and stuff like that.
Betty Boop, all that.
Yeah. I specifically like. It was so funny, like when people were freaking out about. Some people did freak out about like the whole thing about the devil and the whole like thing where you have to go to where you're in hell and you're fighting and stuff like that.
This is a kid's game.
And I'm like
the devil in it.
And I'm like, dude, have you ever seen Pluto's Nightmare?
Oh God, yeah. Like if you've seen,
that scarred me.
Even like when we were growing up, we watched Mickey Mouse's what was it called?
They're like the Vault collections.
No. I'm talking about the Disney Channel cartoon that was they were at the theater or the show or something. The Mickey Mouse.
Oh, Mickey Mouse.
They did
House of Mouse.
House of Mouse. Yeah. So they would show a lot of really like. On all
that
honesty,
Halloween episode still scares me.
They would show like cartoons from the old days that would be in there. That was like straight up effed up. Like it was messed up. It's like Huey and Louie in a cartoon with Donald, and they're like dragging Donald to hell because
they're all devils.
And they're all little devils. And it's like Pluto has a nightmare where he's in hell with a cat, and there's Satan is Lucifer's a kitten. And it's like, what is going? There's fire and brimstone. It's like, what the heck's going on?
Don't even get me started on the Hansel and Gretel thing.
And Cuphead really really pays homage to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I was just like,
and the music especially. Music, it's so good. Again, Cuphead it's a wonderful homage and it's just beautiful. And we'll probably dive into that on the next episode of our video game music discussion here. So anyway, any final words real quick before we go away, guys, about video game music, inspirational stuff?
If you're
opinions you have on the music.
If you haven't listened to No Straight Roads soundtrack, go ahead and do it. If you're not convinced, watch 2 of the boss
Lexi,
fights. It'll at least take 2 of the boss fights.
You are the ultimate No Straight Roads stan. This game probably sold like 200,000 copies, and you're probably 500. You're probably 500 of those.
I actually bought the game 3 times.
But now she's gonna get more people to buy it, so maybe they'll get a sequel. So anyway,
Thank you.
Anything else, David? You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Well,
One thing.
Well, yeah. What else?
One thing I would like to say is
Spit it out.
Thank you, Jake and David, for letting me come on the podcast
You're
and talk
Yeah.
about something I'm very passionate about and I like. And yeah, so thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. No problem. We're on Snarp Fangle. We always we have the freedom to talk about whatever we want, but we also have it open to have serious discussions about anything like video game music or anything or in depth.
Yeah,
stuff.
real serious discussion.
Real serious discussion. Cuphead, yeah. Undertale, Weebs, all that kind of stuff. Anyway,
Excuse me.
we want to thank you guys for listening, taking the time to listen to the Snarp Fangle podcast. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time and your investment, and because there's better things you probably do with it. So we appreciate you. So
Yes, thank you.
have a good day, and Snarp Fangle on.
All right. Bye-bye now.